while he could not believe what was happening. When the Demon King was defeated, Leon Liberto, the era's great hero, knew there were several accounts of the great Demon King being defeated in the past. The Demon King faltered, knowing it was all true and realizing the day might come when the great hero would bring about his death. What bothered him was that the great hero defeated him alone this time. Usually the great hero confronts the Demon King with a full party, and the story follows him as he makes friends along the way. At first they clash because of the hero's overbearing views and personality, but after overcoming countless hurdles, they grow to trust each other and fight side by side. In the end, the great hero and the party defeat the Demon King, and as they reach the place they recall their harsh journey. There are places where people sometimes cry and sometimes praise each other for their work and victories, and the Demon King wanted the same when someone came to defeat him. That is how it has been passed down to future generations. That action was a bit childish. Even the Demon King loved that kind of story, yet he acted childishly and tried to deny it while explaining his position. He explained how he had researched the heroes who beat them, but was asked to leave the matter behind and explain why he was alone without any companion. After a moment of thought, the great hero realized he was enough on his own. Able to use both magic and a sword, he could heal himself and detect traps with that ability. That was why he needed no companion, and the Demon King trembled even more. He discovered he needed no friends, even though he was one of humanity's greatest figures. Leon had already argued at length with his enemy and had no interest in continuing the discussion. He stepped forward, closed the gap to the Demon King, and struck the final blow that ended another story. Suddenly, the scene cut to a town where someone yelled at a boy to get out of bed because it was already morning. It was like a young boy who had just experienced the dream described and then realized it was only a dream. For some reason, he kept having a strange, recurring dream where he was a great hero facing the Demon King. He realized the man must be one of the strongest to defeat the Demon King. The dream felt real, though it was only a dream. In that world, a great hero once defeated the Demon King alone. Known as Leon Liberto, he was considered the strongest. By coincidence, the boy was named Leon. His mother died in childbirth, hoping he would grow up strong and brave. Right now, it looked nothing like that because screaming cut his thoughts off. The screaming boy turned out to be his older brother Snail, swearing at him. Although Leon said he was up on time, Snail had a prickly nature and disliked his younger brother talking back. It was time to leave for a place where Snail asked Leon to carry a bag. In truth, Leon was living a pathetic life, nowhere near being a great hero. Because he was the illegitimate son of a local nobleman, his older brother, the legitimate son of the legal wife, had absolute authority. Snail always bossed him around and treated him like a slave. Apparently today, he was out monster hunting with his friends and had made Leon come along to carry the bags. Leon couldn't even face those monsters, and he kept thinking about being as strong as the hero in his dream so he would not have to worry. After walking a short while, they reached the spot where Snail met his friends, and he apologized for his younger brother and made a deal. All his friends were eager to hunt monsters, praising the young noble and expecting a reward. The fat kid announced they would go to the wet forest, and the other three were shocked. Standing with pale faces, they knew a bunch of goblins were there, and the adults had always warned them not to go. Repeating his claim, Snail said he could handle it even if there were 100, then drew his sword and faced Leon. That sword looked amazing. Snail then said the sword was the best in the world, and had been used by the great hero, which made the three listeners respect Snail more than ever. He tried to show off as much as he could, but none of them understood why he was bragging about such a big accomplishment. Snail explained that long ago, when a horde of terrible monsters invaded this area, the great hero came and killed them all, and his ancestors fought alongside him during that battle. Impressed by their actions, the great hero rewarded them with the sword, and they believed it would stop any trouble from the little goblins, which sounded like a made-up story, but Leon chose to stay silent. Soon they reached the damp forest. Snail was fighting small goblins, slashing them with steady strikes as if they were rough pages. As usual, the other village boys praised the noble kid as much as they could, accepting everything he said about the sword as true. Leon knew they had only met one goblin, and that facing the group would be dangerous. The sword looked as good as Snail had claimed, and given his size and strength it would do, while the other three had been on many hunting trips and could handle those small goblins on their own. Leon was the only person in the group who had never been in a battle, so he stayed out of the fighting because it frightened him. Destiny had other plans. The entire horde of goblins attacked him from behind. Small weapons were gathered together. As Leon tried to stay calm, he realized there were more than 10 and was was immediately overwhelmed by a constant struggle. Snail, the big boy, took command and told everyone to stay on guard because those enemies could kill them easily. They were fighting. Leon ducked into the bushes to avoid getting caught in the battle. The fight made it clear the goblins outnumbered the group, but they were holding their ground for now. They were in the middle of it when a huge monster emerged from the trees behind them, leaving Leon shocked. Recognized as an ogre, it stood still and tall. It terrified Leon. When he screamed in fear, everyone there heard the loud growl. They realized it was an ogre. Ogres are mid-level monsters, and low-level goblins are no match for their strength. The goblins immediately fled from it. They feared they might become targets of its anger. The other boys were certain they could not beat such a monster on their own. Snail, however, was confident that with his sword he feared no monster, not even an ogre. He surged forward to attack the monster, and the moment his slash landed, the ogre caught it with its hands as if it were nothing, smiling broadly. This was both infuriating and frightening for the big fat boy. Seeing they had no chance, the other boys ran as fast as they could. Needing a way out, Snail grabbed his younger brother by the hair to use him. He immediately shoved the boy directly in front of the monster, while Leon tried to make sense of what had just happened. The ogre stood grinning. The snail said he had been brought along only to handle this situation, and told him to be honored he had saved his older brother's life. Then the snail ran off, leaving Lyanna alone to face the huge monster. The creature was drooling over its food when a voice suddenly spoke to the boy, saying this was a low-level monster he should be able to kill. Leon objected, saying he'd never even beaten a goblin. The voice reminded him to think about how he had overpowered the Demon King. Leon thought it was only a dream and that he was no great hero, just the illegitimate son of a minor noble who could barely hold a sword. Suddenly, the boy stopped mid-babble and wondered who he was talking to. Best of all, his fear was gone. The boy saw a sword, reached for it, and stepped in front of the pathetic monster. Unaware of what awaited him, the ogre charged forward to fight Leon. A second later, a single strike sliced off the monster's hand. The ogre screamed in utter agony. Leon realized he had handled the fight effortlessly. His inner voice told him again it had been entirely his doing and that no one had helped. Still standing, Lion was attacked from behind when the monster seized an opening, but he casually turned and took it down with a single strike. Shocked, he realized he had cut through its body. Although ogres have thicker bones than goblins, he still managed to cut through one, leaving him to doubt himself. A voice like the great heroes said he shouldn't be surprised. After a moment's thought, Leon remembered everything. In a split second, while traveling, he wondered if his true identity was that of a great hero. In the past, he had been known as the greatest hero in history, and it is still recognized in books today. Everything was clear now. The great hero had been reincarnated into Leon's body. Standing over the monster's corpse, he found the sword ordinary, and the place felt familiar from a past life. Leon realized he had been called there to kill a monster, and at that time the mayor's son was showing him around. His greed so obvious that Leon gave him a sword he did not need, and the man accepted it eagerly. Earlier, the mayor's son had hidden in the bushes to protect himself from monsters, and might be the ancestor Snail mentioned. And Leon remembered the man did not fight beside him and shook so badly, forcing Leon to hide and protect him during the whole fight. After 100 years, the story had likely been embellished. By the time he left the forest, the other boys were still at the forest edge. The three who had run from the fight were being scolded by Snail, and they were stunned to see Leon unharmed. Snail immediately asked what had happened to the monster. Casually, the boy said he had killed it. It was a good joke that Snail couldn't hold back, and he laughed because he thought Leon was too weak to pull off a joke like that. Leon drew his sword, left the scabbard on the ground in front of the monster, and pointed the blade at him without respect. He did not like the monster screaming. He politely asked him to stop shouting. The overweight boy couldn't stand being disrespected by his younger brother and was about to throw a punch. Trying to calm his older brother, Leon suddenly tossed the monster's head into his hands, which only shocked him more. He screamed and threw it in front of the other three, who sat terrified by what they had just heard and seen. Annoyed, Snail didn't like his younger brother playing around. I was about to teach him a lesson, but the boy had already vanished, and nothing happened when I got back. He opened the gate to his room and called his pet Shura a slime. Slimes were the weakest of all monsters. About 2 years ago, he accidentally found it in the yard. After treating its wounds with medicinal herbs, Shura began following him around. Secretly keeping it as a pet in his room since then, he found it was the only thing that cheered him through all those hard days. After the sudden change in his life, he began checking details about his reincarnation and looking for answers to his questions. His main concern was how he died, and none of the accounts of his feats that described killing the Demon King mentioned it. Every book about the hero's deeds ended with him victorious and living happily afterward. It would have been better if someone had recorded what actually happened. Strangely, he remembered his past life, but not anything after killing the Demon King. His final memory, replayed in countless dreams, was fighting the Demon King. Leon felt something happen the moment he cut the monster down. Then he remembered that after the Demon King's death, a terrible curse had been placed on the great hero. Built to activate when the caster died, the curse drew its power from its strict conditions. The great hero tried to break the curse right away, but it sealed his magic the moment it was cast. Reacting, he tried to drink an antidote potion, but he was also paralyzed and soon became immobile. He then lost consciousness and died, which was disappointing. Ultimately, the Demon King and the Grey Hero fell together. The Grey Hero was stronger, but he had been careless. Leon remembered how the Demon King had tried to tell him that a true hero should always face such monsters with a party. Bringing companions would have easily broken the curse, and since stricter curses are stronger, a curse that powerful had to be aimed at a single target. This was his new life, so he had no interest in regretting what happened in his previous life. For the next step, he wanted to learn about his abilities. Given his current strength, he must have been far more powerful in his previous life, which transferred to him when he defeated the forest monster. Not all his abilities reset, so he decided to test his skills. He used appraisal to open the status screen, which showed what he could do. The screen showed his name and species level 7, much lower than in his previous life. Even though it reached 100, his skill set was far larger and included multiple jobs like swordsman, saint, thief, and more. He had all of it in his previous life. Jobs are a person's card, and when someone attains one, they gain the god's blessing. Their basic abilities adjust to the job, and certain skills and spells become easier to learn and more effective. All jobs cap at level 20, and Leon has mastered every one. When mixed, they gain an even more powerful blessing. A person can only have one job at a time, but in a past life they reach the highest rank in 4 different archetypes. Once someone reaches level 20, they can take a new, higher-ranking job and choose from different categories. That explained how he could take the Demon King's soul, and might explain why he died in that situation. Because of reincarnation, his species level was reset to 1, while his job status stayed the same. Later, he checked his abilities, and found they had all risen from E to S rank. The large blessing bonus had raised them to their current rank, but that was still far below his previous life, when they all had SSS rank abilities. He checked his job points, and found he had 300, which are used to get a job. You only get these points when you level up your species. In his previous life, he reached species level 100, and now he could become stronger than before and attain a new job. Each job has classes, and higher classes require more points to earn. If he checked, he would find 4 job classes he had attained in his past life. The swordsman, thief, mage, and healer archetypes. Each species could reach a maximum of 100, which put a cap on how many jobs a character could have. And points vary by individual, but typically, they receive 5 points for each level gained.
Easy.
Leon had earned 100 points each time he leveled up, so at level 3, he had 300 points, and it was good that this trait carried over into his new life. Some jobs, called extra jobs, fall outside the usual categories. Once a player masters both the swordsman and the mage, they can unlock Sword Wizard. Mastering Knight and Priest unlocks Benefit, and mastering Mage and Healer unlocks Sage. With all his powers, he could have become a Sword Wizard or a Sage in his previous life, but earning 4 jobs required exactly 10,000 points and left him no points for extras, so he skipped the extra jobs, and if he could reach 10,000 points again, he could get the job he had given up. The realization made him see he could become stronger than before. Still young, Leon decided to think carefully about which job to choose, since deciding alone felt difficult. He went to the church to better understand the job tree and weigh his options. Going there was necessary, because jobs were only granted through a ritual called prayer that priests were trained to perform. Before leaving, he asked his pet to look after the place. He slammed the door shut as he left and found his older brother at the doorstep, yelling that he couldn't leave without permission. Snail kept scolding him constantly, but Leon ignored it and mocked his bluster, saying Snail had no authority over him, which infuriated Snail and made Leon realize he had been too casual. Snail could not contain his anger and rushed forward, calling him an impudent brat and preparing to punch him. The attack was too slow for Leon to counter immediately, so he waited for the right moment to dodge. Suddenly, a spell shot through the magic circle and activated a double reflection. The punch landed back on the Fett boy's face. He was knocked unconscious by his own punch. Leon stayed completely still because he had forgotten about his counterskill. Double reflection caused any damage he took to be doubled and sent back to the opponent. But there was a cap on reflected damage, so it barely affected a Demon King class strike, and he had forgotten about it because he treated it as a minor freebie. Worried about his older brother, he went to check on him, but the boy was already unconscious. Leon was about to heal him because his nose was crooked when a woman behind called Snail her darling son. They identified her as his mother, Susanna. Extremely worried about her Fett kid, she arrived at the worst possible time. Finding it too much trouble, Leon looked for a chance to slip away. The old woman moved quickly to stop him and angrily shouted at the boy about what he had done. Leon said he hadn't meant to and that the boy had collapsed on his own, but that wasn't true because the woman had clearly seen everything. She watched as the Fett Key tried to strike him, convinced he could not have fallen like that for no reason and must have done something, and the old woman called it unforgivable, reminded him of his place, and warned she could banish him from the estate at any time, using milder curses and calling him an ungrateful bastard. Leon refused to listen. In a cold, sinister voice, he told her to save the talk for later because he had something to do. He walked off casually, ignoring the old woman. You will arrive at the church after a short walk. When he asked to inspect the job tree, a maiden led him to an orb that activated the moment he touched it. Because the crystal was a sacred object, it displayed every job one could take as a tree diagram, so the job tree was visible. People are born with categories they can and cannot acquire, and while some can be learned, most are innate. In his previous life, he had access to many job categories from the start. The tree was the same as before, and he still had many jobs left. Sage is the main anti-hero of the second. These were all his specialty, and he was looking at something new to broaden his combat skills. Leon knew his current strength meant he had nothing to worry about in combat. There was no Demon King now. In his past life, he had been chosen as a hero candidate at 10, and from then on he trained every day to defeat the Demon King. Focused only on getting stronger, he later realized how hard his life had been. However, he had another chance to live it all from the start. He chose to live without limits and free of everything. One job caught his attention, the Tamer. This grants the possessor the ability to persuade and befriend animals and monsters, and he might also understand what Shura was saying in. Despite how attached he was to the creature, he still could not understand its feelings. To better understand his little friend, he took the job. Returning home at once, he found a maiden waiting for him. She told him the family head wanted to meet him about the incident involving Lord Snail. The maid led him into the master room. His father waited there, sitting beside his wife and son, asking Leon where he had been. When the casual conversation ended, his feather showed he did not like the meeting. Still, he confronted Leon, saying the boy had hurt his elder brother. Leon didn't answer as Snail interrupted, showing his broken nose as clear evidence. Leon breathed calmly. The old lady was furious that someone so violent had raised his hands against his older brother, called him pathetic, and Leon knew the violent man was her son. She refused to listen to anything, shouting at her husband and ordering him out at once because she feared his staying would drag the family name through the mud. His pen hesitated and showed no interest because the boy was only 12 years old. Leon's late mother worked as a maid at the estate, and apparently she was so beautiful that his feather couldn't help himself. He was sure his feather carried some guilt about that, however. Not needing anyone's sympathy, Leon decided to leave. His father was shocked, while the stepmother and brother were relieved and happy that the burden was finally gone. She asked her husband to kick him out immediately, as he himself wished, even though the man tried to deny it. The woman believed that being a colonel meant working at age 12. Even so, his feather considered sending him to a merchant family to work for them, but Leon refused, declaring he intended to become an adventurer on his own. That was a strange statement, because adventurers belong to the guild and mainly take exploration or combat quests to earn money. Because advancement depended on strength and past achievements rather than social status, this occupation appealed to poor farmers and slung children who wanted to transform their lives. Besides being dangerous, adventurers do not receive a steady salary like soldiers hired by the nobility, and must pay for their own equipment and necessities out of their earnings. In his previous life, he worked with adventurers to fight the Demon King's army, but that cooperation did not mean he stayed with them, because he always did whatever he wanted, and his feather worried the boy could not even fight. Leon reassured him that he had already secured jobs at the church, suited for combat. This was a problem because his older brother refused to accept that the boy had gotten a job at his age. He had not earned enough points to get one, likely because Snail had only standard abilities and was not ready to discuss them. Leon said he was leaving the house and could take care of himself, so his father did not need to worry. Later, he returned to his room, where Sura greeted him with a small squeak. Leon could understand it because of his job. As he played more, his serious thoughts became easier to read. Leon had understood how people reacted to her long before he took the job. Midway through, someone called from behind him. It was his feather, its face pale and clearly unhappy about what he'd just done. Without a word, he handed him a bag. The moment Leon opened it, he found it full of gold coins. His father thought he wasn't a good feather, but he could do that much and asked to be forgiven. Leon accepted it gently, hoping it would ease his journey. He immediately cast a spell on the bag, an item box that stores tools in another dimension. It can hold an infinite number of items, then gently packed whatever he could take from the location. He had to consider that the bag was only 2 or 3 times the room's capacity. He planned to get a bigger one that could hold an entire small village. In his previous life, he had a type of item box filled with valuable items. For now, he packed his entire room into that small bag. He felt grateful to be reborn in a place like this. The slime wanted to know where its master was going. It was stunned by his statement that he would leave on his own. To calm things down, Leon told Shura he would take her with him. The next morning, it was time for him to go. He visited his feather to thank him for everything he'd done. Finally free of his life there, he was happy the moment he left. Leaving the estate, he saw a group of people watching him from a distance. As expected, he ran into one of them. His older brother showed up with other goons from the village, pretending to be there to see his little brother off. Snail told him he'd been spending a lot of his pocket money and was pretty short on cash right now. He then demanded the money his feeder had given him for his departure. Leon finally understood and refused to answer any questions, only telling him to stay away. Knowing his brother would not agree, Snail asked his companions to cover him from all sides. He warned that if Leon didn't hand over the bag, he might end up learning a lesson from all of them. Still, Leon refused to hand over a single coin. A goon tried to punch him, but the double reflection activated again and sent the attack back into the space, knocking one goon out cold and throwing him down. They chose to attack from all sides at once. It was useless because double reflection activated again, and the magic threw them all away. It wasn't guaranteed, but sword master skills raised the chance they activate, so they were likely to do so. No one there could understand what had just happened because he hadn't even flinched. Trying to find a solution, one of them attacked him by throwing a pebble directly at him. Again, the same thing happened when the double reflection activated. That pebble was enough to knock the boy down. All of this came so suddenly that no one could accept it. The big, burly boy stepped forward alone with his sword to scare him off. They mocked him into using his job to counter it. Leon was not entertained at all, so he simply held a wooden stick up in front. He challenged him to fight, sure the stick would be enough to defeat him. This went beyond an insult. Snail rushed at Leon with no technique, attacking in anger because he wasn't learning at all. Leon seized the chance and struck with a stick, splitting the sword in 2 with a single strike. Shocked by what he had just seen, his brother lost his balance and fell to the ground while the sword landed a short distance away. Putting on a cute act, Leon declared it the game's grand final, while his brother kept denying it, saying he had never heard of that technique. Leon kept a calm, innocent air and explained his position, but they still found it hard to accept that the sword had been sliced with a single stick. As a clearer example, Leon touched the ground once with the stick, and it cracked. When it shattered, they were stunned. In the description and demo, Leon even split the clouds with that single stick held in the air. Accepting it was even more devastating for them. Feeling moody, Leon came up with an idea and made up a story, passing it off as the truth. This twig came from the legendary tree, and its strength was said to rival Orochakam, the greatest weapon, even surpassing the hero's sword. However, he casually threw it away when he had the chance. The whole group tried to grab it and got into small scuffles. As usual, the noble Key managed to get his hands on the so-called legendary weapon and was very happy to have it. But the moment he waved it sharply, dampening the expectations of the keyed-up person standing there. They pressed for more information about the legendary weapon, but Leon had already left. That marked the start of his carefree journey as a reincarnated adventurer. His first step was to register at the Adventurers Guild. A wagon was taking him to the city. There he faced questions about being an adventurer. Leon accepted graciously and wanted to hear the stories of the people he was traveling with. The porter introduced himself as Ryan, a deranged adventurer working as a fighter, and was accompanied by a mage named Mia. While they discussed ranks, Leon remained unaware. Ryan explained that adventurers were ranked from F to S based on their abilities and track records. Earlier, he was shocked to learn that the highest ranks were SS or SSS. Ranks E and F were for novices, D was for those who had finally established themselves, and C marked where experience began. Nyan realized the boy was too young to be an adventurer, but before the conversation could finish, they spotted a group of women surrounded by goons and looking helpless, and realized the adventurers were being attacked by bandits. The group agreed to help them as fellow adventurers. The bandits claimed to be from Madho House, the most notorious gang that even terrified D-rank adventurers. Those men were famous because, when the Western Guild found their stronghold and raided it with a large force that included high-ranking adventurers, they could not win, and the situation was reversed. The leader demanded every penny they had. Along with the dish set before the ladies, D-rank adventurers weren't ready to intervene in the battle. Leon had no such plan. Without hesitation, he cast a spell, forming a magic circle from a sandstorm. The single attack took all the bandits down at once, and the D-rank adventurers were shocked because they never expected such a spell from a 12-year-old, but Leon dismissed it. They thought he might have used something more advanced, so the others tried to explain he was wrong, and when Neil leaped from the wagon, they were scared to their toes. The boy didn't even say an incantation before the magic. After the attack, all the bandits lay on the ground, and he couldn't load them into the wagon. He had to figure out how to carry them. The two girls he had rescued were stunned, but it grew more frightening when Leon tied up all the bandits with a rope, slung them over his shoulder, and told them he was leaving. A second later, he dashed away at incredible speed, while the other two women stood shocked and unaware of what had happened. Arriving at the gate of one of the cities, he handed the bandits to the entry guard and said he had caught them on the road. The guard wanted more information, but as usual, Leon had disappeared after finishing his task. He stood in the middle of the city. A short walk brought him to the Adventurers Guild branch, where he went to register, and at the entrance gate, he saw a statue of the great hero. Embarrassed to see his own figure, he thought the boy didn't realize who the statue represented. One of the drills described it as the legendary hero who saved the world by defeating the Demon King. Leon noticed the statue and was uneasy about its presence. The woman explained that statues of him stood across the country and even worldwide, and the Adventurers Guild especially idolized him for his legendary strength. It amused her most that the boy in the statue was actually attractive. Shilu introduced herself as the guild receptionist, and when Leon said he was there to register, she was shocked to hear his age. The boy had already been hired as tamer, and the moment he introduced his companion to the lady. Unimpressed that it was only a slime, she advised him against becoming an adventurer in that role. Tamer training skills only worked at high levels, so a person had to be strong as well as have a strong companion to survive. The struggle for those job seekers had always been extremely hard. She thought the boy might advance to the next level, which would help him survive. Because the hurdles for a beginner to become a skilled tamer were so high, the receptionist would not deny her registration. She took him to fill out the form and provide the required information. She told him to be completely honest and not lie about anything, especially the crime records, because the boy was only 12 and she was not concerned. Reading the name, she was impressed that the boy shared it with the great hero, and an exam was scheduled for the next early morning so he could expect something from it. Sam received an assignment that fit his role, and as usual for a beginner, it involved a mock battle. Early the next morning, many adventurers took their first exam, with Jenga as the examiner, who was giving those guys their first orientation. He said he was strict and would not let a week pass without registering the adventurers, because they might die and he would be held solely responsible. Calling up the first applicant, he had a brief argument. One strike was enough to defeat each of them, and the same happened with every other applicant. By the time half of them had been cleared, none of the other applicants passed. They were frightened by the man's strength because he was a full-fledged adventurer, but for Leon, it was just a low-level matter. Now Leon had his turn to fight. The examiner, a beast tamer with a slime, did not want to handle the key alone. You could say a stray dog could beat that guy. Somehow Shura didn't like that and started popping into Leon's head, making it clear he wanted to fight alone. Confident the man would not kill his companion, Leon allowed it, and chatter began in the applicant section, where people doubted his ability and thought he was mad for bringing a slime into the middle of a battle. The instructor had no interest in fighting the weakest monster, a slime, but the next moment Shura read his thoughts and attacked him swiftly. It caught him by surprise. The examiner had not expected that kind of attack. Deciding to take it seriously, he moved in to join the battle. The slime easily dodged each of his attacks. Soon it developed the ability to move so fast it was invisible to his eyes, then struck him out of nowhere with a powerful tackle. The applicants could now see why the man had chosen a slime instead of any other monster, but Leon was still confused after his attack. Still fighting, he used his appraisal skill to open the status screen. Found its strength and other abilities were quite good. It wasn't the way it usually was. The only explanation that made sense was the maiden at the church, saying the companion's abilities were strengthened by the master's magic. In the end, the examiner got down on both knees, gave up, and was happy to have been defeated, letting Leon win the battle. The examiner felt utterly powerless after failing to defeat a slime and taking heavy damage, and none of the applicants could understand that a veteran like him had been defeated by such a low-level monster. Leon is unhappy about the drop in a veteran adventurer's actual abilities. When he went to ask, the examiner passed him immediately. Refusing someone who had beaten the examiner was impossible, and he believed that although the slime was quite strong, he needed to recruit other beasts to fight alongside it. Taking the results, he went straight to the receptionist. People were shocked that the man passed when faced with a famous, strict examiner who had given him an A in every category. The examiner even commented that the guy seemed different, while Leon tried to act normal after practicing a lot. One more question kept bothering him. After asking about the other higher ranks, he found out there simply weren't any adventurers who could meet the outrageous requirements on offer. Reaching that level would require slaying a behemoth. Leon believed it was not difficult at all to reach double S rank. Someone had to defeat a disaster-level red dragon, so the top rank was S, which required a person to kill a disaster-level orc alone, since there were only a few. The only clear explanation was that there had been many SS and SSS rank adventurers when things were stronger, but things were different now. The Demon King's great power once strengthened the beasts and sent them into a frenzy, but he was defeated 100 years ago, and as the world grew peaceful, the beasts weakened. Leon kept going the same way. As he defeated more beasts, it became harder to earn experience points, but he was happier living in a peaceful world different from before. Registration was finally complete. They gave the boy a guild card and a companion tag the tamed beast had to wear to stay recognized. Attaching it to a slime was difficult because nobody had ever brought such a gift before, so he had another option and simply popped it inside the monster, which carried it happily. The slime played on the little boy's head, cuter than expected, and soon Leon went to the quest board to choose the quest to take that day. Two girls came up behind him and asked to join the day's quest. Chatter filled the guild, and Leon recognized them. They were the ones attacked by the bandits earlier, and the tall woman introduced herself as Kira, while the other was Yuri, who had passed the same test and saw him as a solid choice. They knew the boy was strong from how he overpowered the examiner, and tagging along with novice adventurers didn't sound so bad. He accepted the offer right away. Sierra felt relieved because she had been worried about just the two of them and had considered joining a party instead. Female adventurers were rare, so many groups competed to have them join, and those girls had already been approached countless times. They had many cases where girls joined a party with hidden motives that later caused trouble when everything was considered. They decided to join a kid on the quest they had been planning. They had to kill the kobolds that came into the forest. The quest was D rank, and it sounded promising, so they immediately went to the location. When they reached the forest, they found none of them, and the clear sign lay inside the trees, but that was not what the quest required. The receptionist told them the quests they were doing were too hard for their current ranks, and ordered them to stay out of the forest. Leon remembered that and had no interest in breaking the rule, but knew they would be heading back empty-handed at this rate. He blew a whistle right away, and those guys thought it was just a keyed act. As soon as they turned, something rushed toward them. Closing the distance, they saw a herd of kobolds armed and coming to kill them. Leon said casually that each would be worth a single gold coin, but the others insisted it was no time to worry about rewards. Yuri was convinced it was already too late for them to find a way out. With no other choice, both drew their weapons and stood on guard to face the battle. Leon saw they were nervous about their first quest and stepped forward to lead from the front. Sierra told him the slime, and she would deal with the monsters, while Yuri had to keep Leon from getting hurt. The battle began, and the Cobalt-numbered forces surrounded them on all sides. Sora took command on its own, defeating those monsters with continuous tackles. Despite Sierra's efforts to catch them, one of them slid away and aimed at Yuri, who had less combat experience and was trembling as she raised her wand to cast a spell. Leon stepped in front of her and shielded her before she could finish the incantation. While the other two warned him to watch out, he figured out how to handle it and finally caught the monster with his bare hands. He immediately lifted it into the air in a move, so furious no one could understand, and sent it to the floor with a sudden strike, knocking it down in a single blow. Both other adventurers were blank-faced because it was not what they expected from a little key. However, the key felt weaker than in his previous life. The other kobolds saw what happened to their friend. It immediately began biting him from every side. He stood perfectly still, not moving at all. The girls were worried, but he explained those guys were only playfully biting him and that he was offering his whole body to them. For him, it was nothing, a problem he took on at his own risk. Leon tossed them all into the air and knocked them down with 2 or 3 easy strikes. At first, Sierra and Yuri could not make sense of what they were seeing and thought it was a dream, but then it became clear when all the kobolds lay on the ground. In an instant, a whole horde of monster corpses was created. A group of girls shivered with fear. Leon apologized innocently for taking care of all the monsters on his own. He was willing to split the reward as agreed, but the girls did not see it as a problem. At that moment, they heard a howl from one end of the forest. A huge monster appeared that had completely lost its mind. It appeared extremely furious. The monster's shadow completely engulfed the little girls. They were not prepared to face such a monster on their first quest, so the Forest Lord came alone to avenge those who had killed his brothers, and he was intelligent and could speak human languages. The kobold's highest rank was the king, able to destroy small villages and towns alone, and only a senior adventurer of A or B rank could defeat it. The girls thought they were doomed and lost all hope, falling back to their knees, convinced they would die on their first quest. Tears streamed down as they grew reckless, determined only to be brave adventurers and giving in to sentimental behavior, and they even remembered their parents for the last time when Leon stepped into their little sorrow. He said it was a normal monster they could beat, but the girls were shocked, thinking it was a king, not a monster. Angered, the monster showed its strength by shattering a rock shield with its bare hands and made clear it had come to avenge the deaths of its brothers. Although the girls tried to explain they had no intention of doing it, the monster ignored them and raised a powerful punch that would crush those boys to pieces. Leon stepped between them, blocked the attack, and checked that both were ready. They were stunned by such great power. Despite Leon's reassurance, the girls were still not ready and took comfort in having a companion who could handle anything. His calm composure even broke the monster's anger, which had tried to scare him with threats but was not ready to be next. Leon formed a fist and punched the middle of its body, sending its massive bolt flying and snapping several trees as it went. The king had never expected anyone to have such power. The girls treated it as a dream and doubted it was real. Eventually, each of them was defeated. They already had much more than they could carry home. The other adventurers were worried about it, but Leon remained unconcerned. As he spoke, the monster stood up, showing they were still alive. Not ready to see it again just minutes after the first time, the girls hesitated, while Leon stayed calm and took out his magic pouch. While he cleared enough space and began stuffing the monsters into his bag, the adventurers grew more worried about their disappearance and demanded an explanation. Leon gave them a thumbs up again and said he would split the reward into thirds and not go back on his promise. Back at the guild, he went straight to the receptionist, who welcomed him back and asked about the first quest. When she turned, she saw the 2 girls behind her pale and expressionless. Although their eyes were lifeless, Leon did not know what was wrong with them. He arrived to deliver a batch of kobolds, and the receptionist wanted to see them. Casually, he opened the item box and began dumping many items out as the count doubled. So she stopped him at once and asked him not to dump them there, because she had never seen anything like it. Then she led him to a corner. That was the counter for buying resources, where he dropped all the monsters at once, and they were dead but still taking their last breaths. The place was already crowded, and she was shocked by the story of what he had brought back from his first quest. He had probably taken down about 50 of them. It did not overwhelm him. The receptionist spotted an elder kobold in the horde, and it was clear he had gone into the forest despite her warning. Leon dismissed the statement, and she wasn't surprised that they all came out of the forest on their own. Because the issue couldn't be dropped and the boy refused to accept defeat, they went back to the counter to talk. On the way, she learned the boy was even carrying an item box. That proved quite valuable. Finally, he was taken to a storage area, emptied his item bag, and a whole mountain of kobold bodies lay before her eyes. She wasn't ready to believe the item box he was carrying was just a normal one. Leon, by contrast, felt a bit embarrassed that he hadn't made it bigger, but the receptionist's main question was whether he had made it himself. Item boxes are rare magical creations made by only a handful of mages, and they almost never reach the market. The most expensive ones cost at least as much as a wagon. The woman decided to drop the subject, thinking she might have misheard. Amid all that, she noticed the king devastated by a blow and knew it would take seasoned adventurers to deal with it. The receptionist trembled at having that boy beside her, and when she looked to the other adventurers for clarification, they were shaking too. The stories that followed grew scarier, saying the boy had defeated them all alone, including the beast and the king, and the receptionist stood sweating in shock that a kid could do this. She realized he might have done a lot and decided to tell him the next day that she was interested because it would take time to assess. The next day at the guild center, she set a full bag of coins and notes on the table in front of Leon and told him it was compensation for his work. The payout was large but justified because he had defeated about 56 kobolds, including the king and 4 elder kobolds, and paying them all at once made it a hefty sum. However, they were mostly undamaged, so they sold for a higher price because even a high-ranking adventurer could not collect them so perfectly. With that, the quest was complete. Leon was promoted to D rank, and the other 2 ladies were promoted to E rank. Praised for achieving the highest and earliest promotion, the women knew they had not earned it. As the guild mourned, Leon offered them their halves of the price, but they refused because they had done nothing to deserve it. Leon refused to listen to any explanation and handed it to them, saying if they didn't want it, they could donate it. After repeated insistence, they gently accepted it. I'm thinking of depositing it into the guild. Leon had a tidy sum saved, and when he looked at his clothes, he realized he needed some gear. He could not fight without it, and facing a serious opponent would be dangerous for him as he left. He went to a busy market where many people ran different shops. I found the place more prosperous than 100 years earlier, with many people and a wide variety of goods for sale. Finding a closed shop, he immediately went inside and equipped himself with the best material available. They fit him and the items were durable and flexible and suited him, so he paid the amount. The shopkeeper stood in front of the man and thanked him for his purchases. Instantly, he cast a spell to grant impact resistance. Items gave magic resistance, heat and cold protection, and auto-cleaning. A magic circle then covered the boy, glowing as the enchantments continued, and after a while it faded, so he decided to go to a weapon shop while the shopkeeper stood shocked to see the magic unfold before him. He began asking about materials and swords that would serve him best. He found the material was mass-produced junk, better fought bare-handed, and refused to buy it. Deciding to do it himself, he heard a noise next door where a boy was shouting at the blacksmith, asking her to do whatever the customer wanted, and saying he would pay any price to get one. However, the lady blacksmith seemed completely uninterested in doing so. She believed it was suitable because she wanted to make one. Furious, the adventurer charged at her to land a punch and find the best opportunity. The woman drew a sword, sliced off his hair with one slash, and warned him in a menacing voice that she did not go easy on those who made malicious complaints. The declaration in action overwhelmed the adventurer, so he ran away as fast as he could while apologizing for what he had done. Leon noticed Lay's sword wasn't that bad. It was sharper than any of the others produced. From what he overheard, he thought the lady must have made it. Someone immediately stopped her from behind. When she turned, she saw a young boy. A slime sits on his head as he casually asks her to make a sword for him. Although people were working nearby, the woman was shocked that the request came from just a key. Ignoring it, he walked inside, thinking it was just a messed up request telling him to go back home. Leon paid it no mind and walked in, shocking her even more. Angry at his barging in, she told him again to go home because she had no interest in making any kind of sword for him. But the boy, keeping calm, simply asked her what kind of person she had really made the sword for without the slightest flinch. The object moved the woman, and she handled the reaction. He decided to tell him the answer, realizing the boy was not just an ordinary brat. Zeta introduced herself as a blacksmith, and the boy said he was a D-ranked adventurer, which impressed her since he had reached that status at such a young age. Before answering the question, she told him she had a rule. She said she made swords only for those skilled enough to use them. Without thinking, he asked if she had ever made a sword from a material stronger than mithril. For example, he named adamantite. She was shocked because she said she couldn't obtain such a rare material, which is used in legendary weapons. Not even royal blacksmiths had access to it. Leon remembered that the material had not been rare in his past life, so he decided to dig it up himself. She reminded him that it was rare because it was hard to find, but he knew he could find it in the dungeon's deepest parts. Zeta warned him again not to lose his head, since it would take a first-class party of adventurers to tackle the dungeon's deepest parts, and he was talking as if he were going for a walk in the park. She had no choice. She went with him to gather materials and see for herself if the boy could really handle a sword she had made. They moved through the corridor to the North Hawk dungeon. The dungeon had many levels, and the deeper they went, the tougher the monsters and traps became. So far, the deepest anyone had reached was level 20. Even at level 20, the chance of successfully digging up such a rare material was still low. To secure that element, they had to dig down to at least level 30, so Leon made reaching level 30 their definite goal. Zeta had heard so many comments like that she thought everything he said was impossible, and she was ready to take Mithril and head back home. As a blacksmith, she was skilled with a sword and had earned the rare title of battlesmith, and she planned to forge her own swords to make them better than others, having likely trained since childhood. Zeta collected materials and went alone into dungeons that even master adventurers found challenging. With her help, they reached the 12th floor, and adventurers considered her top class. Because of her masculine manner and personality, she attracted female fans, and more clarity about her character was coming. Both faced monsters they could not handle. The first was a black minotaur that shocked the woman. They pressed on and met a boss troll that frightened her even more, and tears ran down her cheeks. On the third encounter they faced, a twin-headed worm that brought on a steady stream of tears. Shrieking beside him, she trembled for a moment. She was trying to find answers to many questions. At last they reached level 30, and she could hardly believe that what he said was true. Leon stayed relaxed as always, talking while he handled the monsters alone. They weren't going to stop at the end, and the girl was even more speechless. Leon considered going deeper because they still hadn't found the material, and the woman grew more afraid, so at that point she just wanted to go home and stay there. As they headed down, she, truly innocent, told him he didn't need a sword from her since he was already strong, and even a mass-produced one would do. He explained that the mass-produced ones sold out in no time, and the blacksmith had never seen a sword wear out as fast as Leon's did the moment she touched it. It shattered into two halves, and as it broke, she worried how he would fight the other monsters since they had no backup, and one of the monsters was already approaching them. Casually punching it, he tossed it aside and told her it wasn't necessary, which shocked her even more and made her realize he was truly capable and not human. They were already far down in the dungeon, and the lady was both tired and exhausted. They wanted something to eat because it was lunchtime for them. He gently took out his pocket and placed it at one corner to prepare for the meal. At the moment, there was a small kitchen in the middle of the floor. His decision to bring everything, including Sura, puzzled her, and she was even more shocked when she learned he also had an item box. Using twigs, he lit a small fire and boiled water in a pot. He let the chopped meat and vegetables stew while boiling pasta in a separate pot. The aroma from it was deeply moving, and the boy was a true master at cooking. Noticing the girl's interest, Leon offered her part of his meal. She refused, saying she had no interest in eating at a place like that. When the meal was finally ready and the pasta was served, Leon enjoyed it and called it delicious. Zeta stared at him, and he realized the girl was very hungry. Gently, he asked her, and she accepted the offer. When she took her first spoonful, she ate it with delight, her eyes sparkling as it relaxed her and eased her anger. At level 33, all three crept to a corner, and as they looked, saw a horde of monsters, so the woman decided to take a detour. Despite her bad feeling, Leon chose that route because it was the shortest, and he was too reckless. Monsters filled the place, and there were too many to fight barehanded. Furious, the girl began screaming. Refusing to accept it, she told him not to call it a little thing, but Leon casually sniffed her sweat and called it a stink, and she disliked it because his behavior and manners were far from normal when he spoke to a girl as she screamed. The monsters spotted them while they were hiding, and the woman immediately took cover behind a 12-year-old boy, believing he could save them. The group was large, so he chose to use magic. What was more shocking was that he had 2 jobs ready for the lady who had just called on him. No incantation or hellfire magic, was needed to turn those monsters into fire and ashes. After their bodies were completely burned, he used an excess of flood magic to put out the fire. Soon the room was empty, holding only the hollow lock felt by all the adventurers. Terrified, Zeta couldn't move at all from where she stood, and as they decided to move on. Elsewhere in the dungeon, another section had already sensed the presence. It was on the bottom floor, who discovered someone was trying to disturb his sleep and annoy him. The monster sensed a resemblance to the young hero who defeated it back then. Angry, the dragon decided to keep the memory of the humiliation he felt when that man dealt with him. Now he intended to take him down. At last, they reached the dungeon's 40th floor. By this time, the woman was completely exhausted and on the verge of passing out, and Liam could feel a presence through the walls. As he punched, he knocked out many of the elements they had been looking for all along. Relieved, she was glad they could finally head back to the surface now, that they had the material they'd been looking for. Liam wasn't interested and kept mining, convinced there was more on the floor. Deeper inside, they found a huge stash of the material that could make over 100 swords, and the blacksmith agreed. At last, the boy could head home because his task was done, but the girl needed a breather. They stayed in a protected area where no monster could reach them. Leon checked his stats and saw he had leveled up. His job level and skills had improved a lot. His companion Slime's levels were about to max out to S, so he picked it up. He told it that if it kept working hard, it would one day be strong enough to defeat a demon king, then flexed and held out his arm to show his biceps, which was pretty interesting. Now they were in the floor 40 save zone, a part of the dungeon that monsters rarely entered. At the lady's request, they rested, since she was exhausted from the continuous struggle up to level 40 in shocks, and as they were about to leave, they heard something approaching, and this time it was not a single monster. Terrified, Zeta wanted to know what it was. The only clear explanation was that all the monsters from the dungeon were heading toward them. The number was staggering and may have reached over 500. The woman was relieved they were in a safe zone where monsters could not enter on their own. Leon clarified that the thing wasn't absolute, since regular monsters could still enter the safe zone. Right then, the monsters stood in front of the zone, blocking any movement from the area. Zeta head or sword removed. With tears streaming down her face, she believed she could take on those monsters and slaughter them all, and in short, her laugh showed she was losing it. Leon immediately used his magic to let her rest and had the slime take care of her. He casually wrapped her in it, turning it into a resting bag. He now had to use his magic to take down the monster numbers. He used Sandstorm first, then activated a double reflection while playing with them. He remembered how he used to take on large numbers. Recalling the brutal battle against 10,000 monsters controlled by a commander in the Demon King's army, he found the current fight trivial in comparison. After a while, once he had defeated most of the monsters, the blacksmith regained her senses as well. Leon said she had passed out from the number of monsters and now had a headache, and since she was embarrassed to admit it, he calmed her. She said she might be exhausted and experiencing a slight memory lapse, remembering they were about to face a large number of monsters on their own, standing in front. Everything was clear, and they were alone in the safe zone. They set out in high spirits. Leon rushed back to the surface as fast as they could because Lady Shirley could no longer handle what she faced. Then the ground cracked beneath their feet. No clear explanation was given for why it happened. The very next second, the whole floor shattered, and all three of them fell while Lady Zeta screamed again. Leon fell to the floor first and caught the woman to prevent an awkward landing. At that moment, she was in his arms. Immediately, she ran out of it. It was hard to believe that she felt embarrassed. When Leon looked up, he realized they had fallen through the floor beneath the safe zone. As he turned, startled, he realized there was a big tail, about an even bigger monster, standing in front of them, exuding a tremendous aura, making it certain that their lives were in danger. Leon instantly remembered it was the poisonous dragon Fafnir. He believed the dungeon was located where he had defeated and killed the dragon. Although he was sure he had defeated it, he still found it hard to believe it had survived. He remembered it had to be the master of the dungeon. Losing her cool again, Zeta thought they were facing the boss. The disaster-level monster had them trapped, and her screams went on. It was clear she was about to lose consciousness, so Leon quickly used his magic again to put her to sleep, and by then he stood in front of the monster. He chatted casually with it, saying it was over 100 years old, which to him felt like only a few months, and and the dragon somehow sensed the man through its body and realized he was the great hero it had faced before. Then someone let out a loud scream to scare him off. Leon realized the man had read his magic to identify him, had no interest in talking further, and decided to kill him then and there. The conversation was worse than last time because the dragon made it clear his only goal was to defeat and kill him as quickly as possible. As it lunged with a snapping bite, Leon dodged and, finding an opening, punched it squarely in the face, which shoved the monster's body into the floor. This showed the dragon had learned nothing in the last 100 years, but it managed to come to its senses. They attacked him again, making it clear Leon couldn't win the fight with his fists alone. He chose to use the ice ring as magic. He unleashed a barrage of ice aimed precisely to kill the monster. That attack failed too. The dragon was glad that nothing would happen while it used its dragon breath. Leon countered with a hurricane. He instantly cast poison resistance, so the dragon's breath could not harm him. Leon was still trying to figure out why the monster felt no pain. The foul-mouthed dragon wasn't really aware of what was going on with them and said he had already transcended death, so no attack could harm him. It made clear to Leon that the monster had become undead. Monsters could keep moving even if their arms, legs, or sometimes their heads were blown off, and higher-class ones could regenerate given enough time. Leon casually called him a dumb monster for revealing his own weakness to the enemy. Since it wasn't ready to understand, Leon used his sacred punishment magic. It began engulfing the monster all at once in the next second. The monster's presence had been completely vanquished, with no explanation for how the boy could even use a purification spell, and after a while light broke through and the dungeon was finally cleared. Next, they returned to the blacksmith's, where she rested all night. Suddenly got out of bed. Calling it all a dream, she thought she had slept in her bed. The dream seemed very real, but it had left her exhausted over the past few days. Leaving, thinking she would not have to work hard, she saw the element from her dream. On the table in front of her lay the object and a small note, which she picked up and saw was from Leon, who was ready to pay her the price as she made him a sword from that material. Crushed, she realized that everything she had seen, including the dragon boss, was real and not a dream. A few days later, she finished preparing the sword and handed it to Leon. He was finding it pretty good and began gently applying some buffs to it. That caused it to light up and made Zeta curious about what the man had actually done. He dismissed it as a minor upgrade, saying it gave an all-element attack, self-repair, indestructibility, and wear prevention. Calling it little was unjustified, since it had become a national-level treasure. Leon did this often, but he was focused on getting paid for making the material, while the blacksmith refused to accept any money. She still had to pay for all the things she had brought, and was hiding under the floor so others would not see them. News reports said the northern dungeon had been conquered. The only clear explanation was that Leon had defeated the boss, and she asked because she still believed what he did in defeating the dragon had been a dream. From then on, no adventurers would come to the town because, when the dungeon boss was defeated, the monsters inside weakened and the dungeon began to collapse, and afterward many adventurers moved on while the local guild shrank and scaled back. That change would reduce demand for the blacksmith, which worried Zita a little. Zita was far more interested in the identity of the man standing in front because his strength matched a great hero's, and she was ready to believe him if he said he was a reincarnation. Leon put on an unmistakable expression to show it wasn't true. His face clearly showed he was lying, but the lady didn't have enough proof to decide, so she let it go this time. News that the dungeon had been conquered spread to every corner of the city, but the victor had not yet come forward to claim the glory. People thought it had to be a senior adventurer par. Those men had never heard of the women's group that was in trouble but could handle it. When they returned, everyone tried to find an answer. Some people, including Nia and the others, suspected this might be the work of the boy who used his abilities to reach D rank and advance through the promotions. On the other hand, the sisters in the adventure business were sure this was the work of the one and only young Key, Leon, while the Key just acted goofy, as if he hadn't done anything that big. Since then, he has gone to the city's guild office. The guild master was furious when he learned someone had cleared the dungeon. He was introduced as Boars. He knew dungeons were the main source of income for adventurer guilds because they attracted adventurers and money, and just a few days ago the dungeon was conquered, and the conqueror was promised a reward. No such person had been found yet, and Wars knew that if one of their adventurers conquered it, the guild would at least earn some recognition. If the person turned out to be an unaffiliated explorer, it would be a total disgrace to the guild that had been tackling the dungeon for years. Just then someone knocked on the door, and an informant came to tell him the investigation report was finished. They still could not find any definite leads, except for one thing she found that was not considered a strong lead. The master sought any information that might lead to even a small advance. According to rumors among the adventurers, a boy might have conquered it. A 12-year-old who had just become an adventurer. The guildmaster refused to believe it because a 12-year-old key couldn't do that, so it was just a rumor. Records from the exam indicate the boy apparently defeated a C-rank adventurer serving as an examiner. He was also reported to have killed the people on his first quest. Those statements sounded odd and worried the guildmaster, and the informer added that they had asked outside the dungeon and said a boy matching the description bought a sword there. Still, the details were fuzzy, but mostly reliable. The guildmaster already had most of the information he needed, and immediately told the informer to bring the boy along. Meanwhile, Leon walked on and came to several cities that sounded fun. Knowing a town lay just west of Badaka, he decided to head there for now, and when a monster tried to attack him, he punted away. Suddenly, he sensed a presence in one of the caves, and wondering whether that could be a person, someone decided to investigate the deep hole where something visible might be a monster, and the slime went alone. Worried, Leon decided to tag along. Soon they reached an opening where a boy was trying to explain that he was not a bad person. When Leon climbed out of the hole, he saw a beast boy shielding someone behind him who looked like his sister. Seeing their condition, Leon tried to confront them about their role as a companion. The boy ignored everything. The girl behind him really needed help. Since he had no choice, he ordered his pet to seduce him while he kept an eye on the other. At once the slain tied him up, limiting his movements. Leon checked and found that the woman was already dead. The statement was furious, and the male beast refused to accept it. He tried his hardest to get her out of the water, because if it had happened just a little earlier, Leon could have saved her. Then he used his magic to bring some life back to the lady. Soon, when the magic took hold, her body began to move. Within a few seconds, she seemed likely to regain consciousness. Leon checked the boy's injuries. He nearly used his healing magic, and it took effect immediately. With the boy's nerves back to normal and all his scratches gone, Leon knew the wounds had healed, but regaining their strength would take time, so it was best to let them rest. Using his rest magic, he put both of them to rest. He covered them with a blanket and a pillow from the pouch he had brought. The only clarification was that they might be siblings, so when he used appraisal magic. Both were cats at level 2 with very low stats. Leon noticed their abilities were strong, so living in the forest must be hard for them. Only one question remained, why they were there. After a while, she woke from her rest, rubbed her eyes like a cat, and saw Leon working on something. She immediately went on guard and tried to scare him off. Leon tried to tell her he was the reason they were saved, but she just woke her brother. Now both of them were trying to scare away the man who had actually saved their lives. Leon remembered a famous clown who could make even the gloomiest people smile. Whenever he appeared, a large crowd gathered, and children especially adored him. To get their attention, he did something funny and began making silly faces like a key, which he really did to make them smile. After they showed no reaction for a while, an awkward silence settled. Leon had already decided he would find a way to make them laugh, so he continued with a silly dance. The children seemed ready to burst into laughter. To make it even funnier, the man actually used his stomach powers to produce a puff. They left those children in fits of laughter, and the children enjoyed every bit of it. Eventually, the three of them sat in a corner, and he served their meals for the day. Reassured it was not poisonous, they both tried a small taste and were delighted immediately. They then ate it without stopping and soon asked for seconds. After the food ran out, Leon introduced himself. In exchange for the soup, he asked them to tell their true story and why they were there. They looked at each other, mumbled for a moment, and then said they were twins. They knew nothing about their parents and had been sleeves for as long as they could remember. Owners exploited the cat beast's exceptional physical strength for hard labor, and one day while they were being transported through the forest, a massive monster attacked their wagon. When the other slaves riding with them were killed, they ran for their lives. The story was too much for just two kids to handle on their own. Lion remembered that their entire bodies were covered in scars. Convinced it came from their time as slaves, he asked them to head out and not worry about anything now that they'd regained their strength. He was telling him that his companion was feared even by the forest monsters. When they stepped outside, they again met the monster that had slaughtered all their slave friends, and seeing an opening, decided once more to enter the cave. Grabbing both of them, Leon tried to reassure them, then made them watch the fight where the slime was driven to take down the monster. After 10 seconds and one tackle, the monster was knocked down by a single hit, and since they had won, they decided to walk with them. Normally, it would take them a long time to work alongside Leon. Cradling them in his hands, he sprinted away with a sudden burst of speed, while making them feel like they were actually flying. Midway through their sprint, they ran into other monsters. Leon brought it down with a single fire arrow, without using an incantation. To everyone's surprise, the monster burned to ash. After a while, they left the woods and started walking normally. Just then he came upon a merchant trembling with fear, and somehow they shook him to the core. The merchant suddenly spotted the two twins. He immediately shouted orders at them and told them how much trouble they had caused him. Seeing both of them hide behind him, Leon realized this merchant must be their master. The master had already pulled out a whip to punish them for running away. Leon hated that the master was playing such a pathetic role, and because he was afraid of the twins, he decided to approach them. Leon grabbed them from behind again and told him to stop. The merchant said the two were his slaves and asked what he could do. His goal was to punish them. The merchant said he was their master, that they belonged to him, and that he determined how they were treated. Leon immediately asked him to provide evidence for the claim he had just made. The merchant told them those men carried a sleek contract and bore a mark embedded in their hands. As soon as both of them looked at the mark, they saw nothing. Their hands were perfectly clean, and the merchant was terrified, unable to believe that such a thing had happened. Leon told him there were no marks. The merchant could not punish them because they were not under his authority. He kept trying to claim he was their master, but had no proof. Leon had secretly used his splendor skill, and that explained it. Once again, help from one of his jobs made it easy, and despite being a crime, he was willing to do it. The merchant was furious at the act and decided to teach the brats a lesson. He beat him with his own weapon for tricking him. As soon as it was used, Leon caught it with his bare hands. Shocking him further, he changed his expression to frighten the master and told him he was the one who had raised the whip first. Both he and Leon tried to teach him a lesson, who walked with the two twins after beating the man. Soon they arrived at one of the gates. As soon as they met Leon's eyes, he was the one worried about Keats traveling alone. Being ranked Dilly, he was generally welcomed into the city of Liberto. Instinctively, Leon used the city's old name. The guard explained the city was renamed after the great hero, who saved everyone from the Demon King's army 100 years ago. This is why the city was renamed, using his first name. Seeing that happen right in front of him was very embarrassing for the man. Entering, he discovered the place had grown significantly in the past few years. The Keeds were mostly afraid of many people, and after Leon had taken those men out of danger, he simply asked what their plan was from then on. And then I realized those guys really didn't know anything. He explained they were no longer sleeves and could do anything they wanted. With no answer coming, Leon decided to leave them at an orphanage for the time being. Still, those guys with small, glittering eyes asked to tag along with Leon for the rest of their lives. Answering the question right away was awkward for him because he was out adventuring and it would be difficult. However, they were trying hard to get him to agree that they would do whatever he wanted. Leon considered making them his companions so they could grow stronger. As he thought that, the status screen showed both of them as companion beasts. Leon never expected such a result just from his thought. A companion beast is a monster used by a tamer, so only monsters can become companion beasts. It felt awkward for him to realize that even some cat beasts could be on his side. Using his appraisal skill again on both, he found their abilities and stats had increased many times over. They had become Leon's companion beasts, so he immediately decided to register them with the guild. He told them the same thing, which brought new delight to the faces of those guys who had been waiting for that answer from the start. Even the cats hugged him as if they were truly in love with him. A moment later, he led them both to the bathhouse with soap and a brush and told them to undress for a wash. At that moment, the boy was acting like an older brother, trying to wash them both. She dried their hair with a hair dryer, then after a while gave them a beautiful dress for a lovely appearance, something those guys had never expected in their lives. Now he needed to learn the two names. None of them knew about Annie, and he knew that would be inconvenient for him. He named them the boy Arak and the girl Iris. They played with their names and enjoyed being known by a name. Dinner time had already arrived. He called all three of his companions for it. When dinner was served, the guys were drooling. Due to their sleeve status, they were not eating it as they asked the question. Leon allowed them right away. Both twins began gulping as much as they could from hunger. The place was frightening for the maids serving the meal. After a while, all the plates were empty. They needed a good rest, and while they rested, Leon realized they needed basic training before going on adventures, so he scheduled it for the next day. Again, in the city, he found it embarrassing and odd to see his statue on every street and corner, which made him feel worshipped. At one corner, an adventurer stood staring at the statue of Leo Liberto as her companions called to her. They had to leave for now. The next day, Leon took both cats for a short practice, then tied an orc troll with his ropes and told him to fight with it. They were both terrified by the man's frightening stare. However, the man was trying to tell them they were not that strong, and that the two of them together would be enough to take it down. The monster was a higher class that even senior adventurers struggled against. Instead, he simply asked them to hang out with whatever they had. They both understood the task, so Leon let it go after a brief sniff at its back. When the monster lunged at them, they kicked it and sent it flying like a football. Both stood stunned, and for the next practice, Leon casually brought a dragon along. He kicked it with his legs again, causing it to scream. When the dragon attacked the cats, it was harsh training for them, but in the end they managed to overcome it. After 3 days, Leon realized they were getting the hang of combat, so he could finally take them to the guild for a visit. The Liberto branch was quite grand. When they entered, the receptionist greeted them, called them a bunch of cute children, and wondered what they were doing there, so Leon showed her the adventure card. She was impressed that he was a D rank for his age, and Leon asked her to accept the other two and complete their registration for the next exam. She told him it would be quite difficult when he asked. Becoming an adventurer required being old enough to communicate properly with the client, because if a very young person joined a party, their qualifications would be judged more leniently. Their age made it difficult. Leon knew he would have to hold them without leaving any record. Time to choose a quest, and he studied the board. He spotted one that caught his eye. The quest was a C-rank area investigation that paid 3 gold coins. About 30 kilometers away, roughly a half hour if he ran, he was still thinking about the possible outcome when someone interrupted, calling him a brat in a very disrespectful tone. Leon explained that he was an adventurer with his 3 beast companions who were. There were adventurers too, and the explanation was calm. The man could not hold back his laughter. Mocking them for posing as adventurers, he immediately demanded that the other man hand over the quest because he intended to take it. As the man closed in on Leon, the slime lunged at him with a quick strike. He had severe pain in his hand and considered whether he should kill it. Leon denied it, saying no killing would take place. Leon apologized for the slime's attack, but he struggled to accept that a creature a stray dog could kill had done it. How to Vanger. The man lifted his sword, reminding him of the rule that any companion beast that hurts a human must be put down. Leon was not calm at that moment, and was angry that the man claimed he would take it down, calling him wrong. Because he had tried to contact his master without permission, those words crushed the young man's pride. Furious and ready for a real fight, he ignored the guild staff who told him not to and lashed out in anger. As a B-ranked senior adventurer, he declined to listen to a guild staff member's statement. Just then someone came up behind him to remind him of his place, and as he turned, it was a beautiful woman in elegant clothes, and he recognized her as Lady Henriette. She asked the guild staff to tell the whole story, and when they finished, she realized the man had tried to attack the companion beast to steal the quest form from a little boy, and the other adventurer could not deny it. Angry, he turned around, apologized for what he'd done, and walked away. That reassured Henriette, who had asked whether Leon was all right. He spoke to her respectfully. She clarified that just the name would be fine, but he acted as if she might be a celebrity. At that moment, a girl stepped up from behind, unwilling to accept Henriette's calm. She wanted to make it clear she was just an ordinary adventurer, and in that moment, she caught Leon's gaze. She closed the gap a little more. Her behavior changed when she realized the boy was too pretty. In the end, she invited him to a new character date, which Henriette did not like. Smacking her on the head, she told her to mind her own business and not make an obscene scene. Cannae liked pretty boys, which Henriette knew, but Henriette asked her not to become a criminal, so Cannae assured her she would not do anything like that. Decapitation by her own master would be her fate, Keen saw the girl reach for her sword, Keen asked her not to and to step away from that stern expression. Suddenly, another adventurer appeared behind the two little cats, and her friend said she had poor eyesight because she was in love with those beautiful kittens. Her face looked pained, and another strange woman had appeared, drooling when she saw the children and clearly a paid-for kind of lover. She was casually inviting them to play together as she reached into her back pocket. She took out 2 candies and handed them to people who refused to accept them. Henriette and Leon's other expressions made it clear she was really scaring them off. She apologized, then respectfully introduced the women who would join their party, Kane and Tina. Leon introduced himself and his beast companions, including the slime Shura, while waving back. It was fairly clever to admit that he was willing to be a slime. Keen apologized for the man who had chatted with him earlier, saying he was in a bad mood after failing the promotion exam and being eliminated at the application stage. They might think the boy was out of character because he lacked skill, and then wonder what kind of quest he planned to take on. Have they both looked at the pamphlet? It was clear to them that the task was difficult because the destination was quite far, and the only reason no one had accepted it in 3 weeks was a lack of clear explanation. To make matters worse, it was a C-rank quest, and they were shocked that 3 kids accepted it. Leon explained he was a D rank, which surprised those women. Considering his age, they thought the quest was for C rank or higher, and advised them to pick a different one because it would be harmful to them. Leon had already decided to stick with this choice and would not back down, and the statement again brought a delighted look to Cannon's face. Henriette suddenly clapped her hands and offered to help them, tagging along because her heart wanted to. The other party members seemed to have no objection, but they had hidden motives. Leon was the only one who wasn't ready and imagined what it would be like to stop running while carrying the others. It seemed his 2 other companions didn't want to either end. They were not in favor of the idea. He tried to dodge it, feeling bad about refusing to help, but Henriette kept asking to tag along because the kid was only a D rank, so she felt a little worried because traveling with the children would not be easy. She felt intense sympathy, convinced the boy had been carrying everything from the start, but Leon had actually met them only a few days earlier. They made it clear they were not after the prize he was to receive, and Leon knew his refusal would change nothing since those men could follow him even if he refused, and nothing else. Henriette also wanted to visit the famous hot springs. The people at the location had been busy lately, so this looked like a good chance for a break, and the other 2 seemed to agree. Once again, their goal was to pick a fight with a pretty boy, while the rest just wanted to share a hot spring with cute kitties, with Henriette in charge. Decided to put them in their shoes and gave them a good scolding. At the city's main gate stood a wagon park, and Henriette tried to explain that although the wagon could only carry 3 people comfortably, the other kids wouldn't be a problem. Leon realized the horse pulling the wagon was a unicorn named Cheer, with several times the hit points of a normal horse. With that, they figured the location was no more than an hour away. At the back, the other 2 girls were eager to sit in the cramped space with a boy and the 2 kids, planning to hold on to them during any bumps, and Henriette knew their ulterior motives. She told them to sit at the back. About an hour later, they reached the village of Regina, a small settlement powered by 2 windmills. When they reached the head chief's house, he was shocked to see Lady Henriette with them. They explained the village was small and had nothing notable except its spring, so they could not afford to pay for her to join the quest. Henriette made clear she was only accompanying the real adventurer who took the quest, and only his compensation would count. It was a relief, and Leon introduced himself as a D-rank adventurer who asked for more details. The chief said monsters had been appearing more often in this area because the forest was close by, but it was unusually rare for them to leave it. He wanted them to determine the cause of this change in behavior. The only explanation was that something might be happening inside the forest. The chief wished them luck for the quest, thinking it might be quite difficult. Immediately, the group entered the forest to find the true cause. Aware that it was a huge task that would take a long time, Tina explained that her scout role gave her useful skills for finding enemies and exploring. Her next remark about being good at tracking down worried both the cats and Leon. He made clear that he was also good at finding monsters. At that moment, even Henriette felt uneasy about the boy tagging along with those 2. They could have been left in a part of the village. Leon was certain they were capable. Despite how they looked, they were not ordinary keys. It could be useful in the battle. They moved deeper into the forest. Henriette thought it odd that they were already neck-deep and hadn't encountered a single monster. Tina couldn't sense any monsters either, so Something unusual is happening. Leon had a hard time detecting anyone using his skills, but they weren't covering the whole forest. He immediately chose to use his whistle power to draw out all the monsters. A sound echoed through the forest. At that moment, they noticed something approaching, and he warned the others to be careful because a monster was coming from the southeast. As a scout, Tina hadn't noticed anyone until that moment. Suddenly, as it came into range, she also felt something approaching from the southwest. The group was shocked that the boys sensed it before Tina, who was a scout. All three decided to be on. A fairly large monster appeared. It turns out to be a giant tarantula, rated danger level A. The group was stunned to discover a monster lurking in the forest. Henriette stepped forward while Canna, a mage, used her magic to raise an earth wall as a shield. Concerned for the children, they asked them to stay at the back, while Henriette went on to slash the monster, slicing off one of its legs with a single strike. Leon clarified that other monsters were coming around too, and their numbers were substantial. They needed reassurance, so they asked and found out it was true. Immediately, many were on their way, possibly 20 or more. The news was not worth dwelling on, and Henriette could not handle one of the stories. Her leg became trapped in a web, and over the next few minutes, dangerous B-level monsters in overwhelming numbers surrounded them. All three party members tried to keep up with the creatures, tackling and slashing them down. They're still struggling with the web, and somehow one of them lost their footing. A monster was about to attack from behind. The slime rushed in and whipped it away with its tail in one strike, saving Canna from a mishap and earning thanks. Realizing it was no use staying in the middle, Leon asked the other two to wait while he moved forward. Grabbing his sword, he moved to face the monsters. Henriette tried to stop him, but it was already too late. Already swinging his sword, he delivered a series of slashes, slicing monsters in half and shocking the other three, who couldn't even land a scratch on them. His movements were as fast as a sword strike. They fell from only a couple of seconds. Realizing its companions were being killed, the giant monster came toward Leon and attacked, while Henriette was still stuck removing the web that covered her. As it launched a web attack at Leon, he smoothly dodged and sliced it away with a single strike. Get into the monster's eyes before it can find a way out or think of something else. Leon jumped off and made a single slash that split the monster into two equal halves. Everyone else who saw it could not accept it. They treated it like a dream, and their sportsmanship even matched Henriette's. The other two were shocked by what happened. They decided to confirm whether the man was a tamer or something else. Leon pretended he only knew a little about sword play, but his attack was far from minor. At that moment, a monster attacked the humans from behind. Henriette noticed it but could do nothing to stop it. The men needed no help as they kicked it away with a single kick, killing it instantly. The party took a moment to grasp what had happened, and though they thought it was a dream, Tina still blushed at how strong and cute the kids were while their shock changed the flow of the battle. Leon had already spotted something even more dangerous headed toward them. As it drew nearer, he realized the boss had come after damaging all the trees in the forest. It soon reached them, and they recognized it as the Queen Tarantula, with a danger level of S, and the highest adventure rank present was A. The disaster-level monster was many times larger than the tarantula they had just faced. Tana chose to withdraw and accepted the offer. With no other escape, the monster noticed their move and immediately shot its web. Before anyone could find a way out, webs covered them all. They had nowhere to move. Their movements were restricted. Henriette decided to cut away all the web it was going to make to create an opening. The moment she slashed, the web's elasticity pushed the strike away, and it had no effect. Canny used her magic to burn them all. Nothing even scratched it, and Kin was stunned that a light attack did no damage. They were still trying to find a way out when, without warning, Tina was pulled into one of the web traps. The monster took it away, and Tina regretted it. Her plan from the start was to take the kids to the hot spring first, but she was going to be food. The monster pulled her closer and closer to its mouth, as if to taste her. Kane tried to stop it by using her ice magic to slice off the monster's face. A single strike seemed to erase her magic, proving they had no chance in the battle. Scanning the area, Leon immediately used lightning magic to summon a bolt from the sky. Pointed directly at the monster, knocking it to the floor with the hit. The scene was surreal, and for a moment no one could open their eyes because of the light. They soon realized the monster was completely dead, and Tina was about to be freed. And Tina looked at the monster, then at Canny, thanking her for using such powerful lightning magic. Thank you very much for watching. Make it clear that she did not know how to use it at first. They were searching for a solution and then turned to look at Leon. He gently but firmly accepted that he could use a little magic too. Calling it little, again, contradicted what he had actually done. They saw the queen monster had also been defeated. Many questions still needed answers, but they couldn't find a starting point. The man they faced could pinpoint enemies, fight with a sword, and use magic, making him a one-man party who played along with the kiddies and enjoyed it. They prized it and kept drooling over it, so the leader told them to mind their manners and ignored the whole scene for the moment. The only clear reason for being present in the forum. That was the queen monster. The cluster of spiders scared the others and drove the monsters toward the village. The forest had no monsters, not because they fled, but because the spiders had eaten them all. If left unchecked, they probably would have eaten everything in the forest and eventually come out to attack people. Regina. As the nearest village, it would have been the first target, and with nothing left in the forest, Henriette felt some relief. Leon realized it would be better to take them all down at once. Again, he used his whistling technique, startling the other party members present. When they asked for clarification, he said it was meant to lure the monsters, now that he thinks about it. Do they remember that she heard it before the giant monster appeared? Henriette wanted to know the area covered by that whistle. His clarification that it covered the whole forest left everyone stunned and terrified. After that, Henriette and her crew fought many monsters, each attacking them. After hours of non-stop fighting, they finally returned to the ridge in the village. The chief was stunned to learn a disaster-level monster was there. The group was stunned and amazed, while the chief praised Lady Henriette for leading the expedition and finding the root cause of the problem. Although they tried to make clear, they did not play a major role. The chief refused to accept it, dismissing it as a joke. She said they had cleared almost all the monsters in the forest, so there should be no trouble for a while. Afterward, all of them were taken to a hotbed center. The chief accompanied them, confirming it was the best spring in the village. The whole place was reserved for them, so they could relax and enjoy the hot baths as long as they wanted. Inside, they were handed their clothes, while the beast men were still figuring out what hot springs were for. Could they immediately stop Leon before he enters the men's bath corner and, blushing, ask him to tag along into the women's? He denied it, and she thought that since they had fought together, there was little need to get to know each other. Her ulterior motive was to wash his back while he was naked, without any worry. Leon worried, but Tina believed the young boy was mature enough to come along. In fact, the kiddies could do that because little boys are allowed into the women's bath. Canny and Tina argued briefly about who would take whom. Tina finally understood the situation and agreed not to take the boy. But inside with bait, Iris denied it immediately. From behind, Henriette watched it all and disapproved of the behavior. She scared them both back into behaving properly. Inside, Leon was taking a relaxing bath. The kids were playing a small game, trying to swim in and enjoy the hot spring. Although it was the men's bait, Iris was dragged along after she screamed because she did not want to stay with the adventurers. They were enjoying the warm bath when two women entered the men's bathing area naked, and one admired her ample figure while being impressed by how large the men's bath was. They weren't worried about slipping there because the spot was reserved for them, so almost no one else was around. Leon turned away to avoid looking at her prominent features. Moving closer, she tried to touch the boy with her bare body, but she realized she could not reach him because a barrier stood between them. The barrier frustrated her more and more because it kept preventing her from touching him. Meanwhile, Tana was scaring the kiddies by playing with water she thought was mixed with their sweat, and Henriette watched it all again. Trying to sneak a peek, she stepped in. Her teammate questioned her for tagging along because she had tried to stop them earlier. Canadians say the woman could not stop herself from being naked in front of a pretty boy. She denied it, saying she had been there earlier because she felt lonely in the women's bath. She decided to tag along. While they were chatting, they turned and saw that Leon and his beast men had already fled the room. They called it regrettable, but their faces suggested they might commit a crime themselves. Leon took his friends to the other side of the bath. She entered the women's section and enjoyed it there. Returning to the guild in the city of Liberto, Canny and Tina were upset that Leon left them while they were in the bath and thought he had left early because they had behaved inappropriately. When they arrive at the guild, the receptionists welcome them. They praised Henriette for what she had done at Regina, taking down a queen monster in the forest all by herself. She credited her efforts alone for solving the problem and thanked them for coming along, believing the boy might have died if they had not been there. None of the three adventurers wanted to claim credit for what they had done, so they stared at each other. The receptionist was ready to give a special reward for the quest they had finally completed. Can they confirm whether Leon would get the same reward, since the receptionist found and clarified that the quest had become different from before, so they decided to change the reward system. Everything was as they had expected, and Henriette could not accept credit she had not earned. The boy did most of the work to take down the monster, she clarified. Stunned, the receptionist froze. He reminded them they were talking about handling a queen monster and its smaller ones. That was something a D-rank adventurer couldn't handle alone. Henriette repeated he was the one who defeated the queen monster. At first, the receptionist was shocked and thought it was a joke, but the adventurers' faces left no doubt about the truth. Knowing Henriette would not make outlandish claims, she ordered the reception to hand over the entire reward to him. Additionally, she recommended promoting him to a rank, or if that was not possible, to B rank. The receptionist thought the bizarre request might be intentional, and if so, she might have accepted it without hesitation, yet could never have done such a thing. The receptionist now wondered if the boy had really taken care of everything. The receptionist was disgusted. It was a high rank for his age, and people saw Leon as a breath of fresh air. She took precautions because the boy had already been in a small fight with an adventurer at the guild, so they should keep him from more trouble. The receptionist pictured the boy as an adult, then realized it wasn't a good time to think about it. She decided to report every incident to her supervisor. He was sure they would take his status as an A-rank adventurer seriously, even though they never paid attention to things like that. The receptionist wanted to know what the boy's abilities were connected to. Afterward, he accepted several more quests, including finding a goblin nest, collecting essential herbs for potions, and locating a missing work of art. Because all the quests were for low-ranking adventurers, the receptionists figured they could gauge his true strength. Each time things turned out differently, Leon exterminated all the goblins there and called it incidental, which the receptionist found completely absurd. That group also included a goblin lord, far more powerful and intelligent than ordinary goblins, making it even scarier. A single strike to the back of its head made it clear the boy only needed one hit to take it down. Later, he had gathered far more for her collection than the request asked for. The total reached 2,000, and almost all were high quality, mainly used to make high potions. These items were much harder to obtain than common herbs, and even an expert would be lucky to find only a few dozen in a day. Strangely, he accepted the quest in the morning and had delivered 1,000 of them by the end of the day. While retrieving the artwork, the man went to great lengths to capture the gang that stole it, and said it was an incident he did not mean to cause. Alone and without calling for help, he defeated all the bandits. The Madhu House was a bandit group as dangerous as any gang known for its fighting skill, and lately rumors said it had expanded its reach and influence in the area. Still, he had caught one of the executive class men. Even veteran adventurers needed careful preparation to challenge them, and he defeated them alone. The executive was badly disgraced and even called the boy a monster. The receptionist realized that everything Henriette had said was true. On a fine day, Leon was walking down the street. He noticed Shura seemed unwell. He thought it was probably because she'd been in a lot of fights earlier, and the cute little cats were worried too. Shura often ate small animals, so it might have been one of the things she had eaten. Before he could understand anything else, the slime began to glow and sensed something was wrong. Without hesitation, he decided to take it to an expert, believing someone in the city could care for such a beast and the guild staff might help, so he immediately headed for the guild headquarters. The receptionist recognized Leon and was about to tell him something about the master's interest. He stopped her and explained the slime wasn't in good condition right now because it had started glowing and the receptionist saw it clearly. It occurred to her that it might be evolving the way monsters often do, but she didn't know the exact conditions needed for that. Until now, Leon had heard about it in his past life, but had never seen anyone evolve up close. The receptionist was amazed that despite being a slime beast, it could trigger their monsters to evolve, which was very useful if raised properly. Without warning, the glow stopped, and the slime turned red. It turned out to be a red slime with all its stats maxed out. The receptionist became frightened the moment it turned red. She thought they were ferocious and aggressive, and far stronger than ordinary slimes, and the receptionist immediately warned Leon to be on his guard, because companion beasts had sometimes disobeyed their masters after evolving. Suddenly, the slime began acting goofy again like before, and seemed much stronger, as Leon could see. As usual, there was nothing wrong with it. It jumped onto the boy's head and began walking, wobbling like it did before. They got a clear sign that everything was fine, and the whole guild felt relieved that nothing dangerous happened. That reminded the receptionist that the guild master had told her to bring him to the office because he wanted to meet him. Meanwhile, the guild master sat reading a report. He tried to understand the day's concern when he was introduced as Denver, and by the time Leon was also in his office. Denver confirmed his name after staring at him and said the boy looked like any normal child, while the receptionist said his record was completely at odds with his appearance. The guild master still wasn't convinced he should be promoted to a rank senior adventurer, believed that despite defeating a goblin lord, it remained a goblin by the end of the day. This clearly showed the man had no idea what real monster species and their levels look like. The receptionist tried to explain what a goblin lord really is, saying they are especially hard to kill even for seasoned adventurers, and because they always have a horde of companions, it is impossible to defeat them without a party. Denver finally realized it was strange that a little boy had defeated one by himself, and there might be something special about it. The master had called him to ask whether he had borrowed help to do it. Leon innocently clarified that it was only him and his companions. In any case, Denver was not ready to accept that those little kids had helped defeat him. That included the slime. The receptionist reminded him again that they meant a red slime. The man grew thoughtful. Trying to understand what it stood for made it clear he could not be in the place of a master. The guild master believed they could only defeat it because of their excellent subordinates, so the receptionist spoke in his favor since he did not deserve the position. The guildmaster again said he acted alone and no one else was involved in the battle. The speaker clarified that telling the truth would not harm the boy's position. Leon repeated the words. The guildmaster considered a request from an A-rank adventurer to be demoted to B rank, which went against the guild's promotion policy. Promotion to C rank usually takes over a year, and reaching B rank makes someone the guild's face, which demands more than raw strength. The receptionist understood the point he was trying to clarify. She recommended a C rank instead of a B rank, which fits his current strength. That seemed reasonable because he had not only killed a goblin lord, but also exterminated a queen monster a rank above C, and the guild master found the claim suspicious. This time, the receptionist had reached her limit and refused to accept that Lady Henriette was a liar. With no other choice, the guildmaster agreed and kept considering it. They were still discussing the best course of action because Denver was very indecisive. When the confirmation came, the receptionist felt relieved, and Leon was promoted to C rank, which this would make him eligible for more quests and let him add to his accomplishments, and it might be the only way the indecisive guildmaster could decide. There was an ulterior motive. She would also get a raise that day. At the guild headquarters, Leon met Henriette's party again. They congratulated him on his promotion to C rank, but thought he deserved a much higher rank. It must be the guildmaster's limitation. They had all gathered there for some kind of expedition. It seemed adventurers were being summoned. Many people were standing there. A guild staff member stepped forward, asked everyone to pay attention, and explained why they had called the meeting. The guild itself requested a quest to investigate a recent rash of kidnapping. Liberto is tightly controlled, with almost no crime and little influence from shady groups, so kidnappings are rare, but recently there has been a surge in both attempted and successful kidnappings. The regional lord himself assigned the quest, and since maintaining security was vital, the guild declared it a high priority and summoned everyone. Suddenly, an adventurer raised his hand and questioned it. The scene looked like it needed only high-level adventurers, so he asked why mid- and low-level adventurers were not called to help bringing wares, and the guild member gave an honest explanation. Before the regional lord's request, they had already received a request from someone connected to one of the victims, and some of their adventurers went out to investigate. All of them are still missing, and the news shocked everyone in the room. This was why they had limited the quest to C rank and above. Gris was there and disapproved of a brat like Leon being included among the high-level adventurers. Leon struggled to accept that he had met him before, and when he remembered, he recognized him as a troublemaker. Guild staff confirmed he was a C-rank adventurer. Gris thought the guild cared nothing about the rankings they were currently giving and should reconsider them, and they then took the chance to mock him even more. Being told he might not pass his promotion exams, and then seeing someone else promoted bothered him. Gris was more than angry. A A fight was about to start when Henriette stepped in and said she personally vouched for the boy's abilities, that he deserved his title and could even be called better, and Gris was furious. Her statement, he believed, had vouched for and led to the promotion without regard, but she denied it up front. They were in a standoff for a while. Grizz asked about the little cat beside him and whether it was as strong as he was. The slime could not tolerate someone questioning its master and threatening to kill him. Leon denied it, saying the two were companions, and that as a tamer he was simply bringing them along, which was not wrong. Gris had no answer and ground his teeth. Walking away, he warned them not to get in his way during the expedition. The slime again asked the master to approve killing the man, but Leon dismissed him as only a minor threat. He denied it again after a while, as Leon's small group walked outside the city. He remembered the staff had told everyone to do their own investigations, but also gave strict orders to report to the guild at least once a day. They were supposed to watch for trouble, and if anything happened, the whole guild staff would step in and resolve it. As Leon walked down the middle of the street, he noticed something suspicious, and at that moment, two men caught his attention. They walked toward a close ally, and as soon as they had the chance, they knocked a man out right away and put him into a sack. It was clear the clothes they used were soaked in soap laced with some kind of sedative. Planning to follow them, he told his two beast companions to hide using magic. He had already taught them stealth skills, and as cats they picked them up naturally. The men threw the sack onto a wagon and drove off. Leon was certain the wagon would be inspected at the city's outer gate. The Adventurer Guild issued the instruction, and it should cover the jute bag carried in the wagon. However, it seemed more suspicious because the guard let it pass without any further checks. It made him feel uneasy, but they stuck to the plan and followed them to keep track. As the wagon gone through the forest end, they reached a suspicious building that was quite crowded. They thought he could handle it alone, but he wasn't ready to move forward because that would get him scolded. Back at the guild, he called all the adventurers to a specific spot, while Gris kept mocking his statement. Soon they reached the spot where Leon had seen the building. Gris pointed out there was nothing where he was pointing. Leon explained it was hidden by a barrier that couldn't be noticed at a glance, and even Henriette couldn't sense any mana. None of the adventurers could find any building or structure, but Leon thought the barrier wasn't hard to spot since it was clearly visible. Gris seized the chance to mock him more and explain how the man had helped trick them. Convinced he would take credit where none was due, they decided to back out, and Leon asked him to wait. To show him an example, Gris reached out to touch one thing, and suddenly his body brushed another as he passed. Seconds later, the barrier pulled him in, and everyone was shocked when he disappeared. Regaining his senses, he ran out of the barrier at once, saying the others had seen him. The barrier was clearly designed, so any outside intruder would trigger an alert on arrival. Leon immediately unleashed cyclone magic to sweep away the barrier's mess. After a while, the barrier fell away, and every adventurer could see the building through it. They were surprised that a young boy had used advanced magic without an incantation. Henriette knew she should not worry about it. She ordered all the adventurers to go inside and start fighting. Henriette stepped forward and cut through the gate with one strike, removing it and opening a path for her fellow adventurers. Others were doing their part and somehow managed to force their way in, breaking the main gate. Inside, everyone was calling for those adventurers and intruders to be slaughtered. Inside, they saw the people ahead were just ordinary comrades, so they believed they could defeat them all at once. When they fought them, they noticed something was wrong. They had tremendous power and were surprisingly strong, even able to overpower high-class adventurers. The battle grew more intense. Kine couldn't understand why they had such strong powers, but noticed they handled their weapons poorly, which worried her. Leon realized the guys weren't used to combat, but their high stats had given them the physical strength to put up a tough fight. Gris struggled to handle them, and while he was fighting two at once, they broke through his defenses and prepared a powerful slash to bring him down. The red slimes intervened and took down the two attackers with a single strike. They crashed face first into the wall, and Gris was surprised to see it. He had never expected a slime to be so powerful. It was only the beginning. When he saw Leon fighting several attackers at once, he couldn't believe someone who was only a beast tamer could have so much strength. Iris and her brother used swift techniques to fight and take down enemies that were hard for the adventurers, making them look like easy pickings. Henriette and her party did not find it particularly awkward, since it was similar to what they had seen before. After a long, relentless pursuit, they finally tied up all the bandits who had been fighting them from the start. Some adventurers were trying to figure out which group they might be connected to, while others had long seen some of them around. After the group kept a low profile for a while, the claim that they were behind large-scale kidnapping was shocking. Most concern focused on their abnormal strength. Henriette immediately asked them to care for the kidnapped individuals, as they were their top priority. An adventurer asked a bandit about it, and the bandit denied kidnapping anyone. He repeatedly insisted he had not lied. To be clear, the bandits explained that even if they were kidnapping people, they had no way to sell them because the city's strict slave controls made every trade market fear those rules. Another bandit came too and wondered where they were and why they were all tied up. The adventurers refused to accept that the bandits were toying with them, while Henriette understood enough to tell everyone to remove their handcuffs immediately. While this was happening, other adventurers combed the area and found only a few people, though the report said there should have been many more. When asked, the bandits said they knew nothing and refused to admit they had kidnapped anyone. This was a real mystery they had to solve because what they were saying seemed true. By then, they'd already forgotten what they'd actually done. The only clear point was that someone was controlling them at that moment. Leon stepped forward and agreed. The adventurers refused to accept it because controlling someone would require a brainwashing spell. The brainwashing spell was so difficult that hardly any of them could use it. Besides, no one had ever seen anyone control so many people at once. Leon thought about it, but the spell came easily to him. He had cast it far more often, but the other person thought casting such a spell was a difficult task. Recalling his past life, he knew only a few could cast that kind of spell back. Others clearly realized the person was onto something big. Then they asked Leon to find out who was involved in all this. Instinctively, he pointed out that the person was right there. This caused chaos in the area as everyone looked at one another, each thinking they were the culprit. Leon, without saying a word, drew a circle with his fire lance magic and aimed it at the bats perched on the roof. When it hit the target, those birds started running away. Adventurers called out for them to stop immediately. Stepping forward again, Leon used his magic to fire several arrows of flame at them. A single shot caught them all, and soon the gunfire swept over them, and the bats were on the floor the next second. They changed their appearance to look like ordinary humans as they stood. Their appearance, wings, and long lifespans made it clear they were not ordinary humans but vampires. The adventurers could not accept what they saw because it seemed impossible that vampires were still alive. Even Henriette, one of the senior adventurers there, was terrified to her core. Vampires were undead, intelligent, human-like creatures feared for feeding on human blood. People also said they could control those whose blood they had drained as their serf. Everyone believed they had already been driven to extinction. Henriette now understood that these were the ones controlling the gang members. In short, they were kidnapped so their blood would be drunk. The adventurers tensed when they saw a group of vampires standing before them. One vampire seemed impressed by the skill used in finding them out. He clarified he controlled the bandit group. It was worrying that they were facing so many at the time, since even one was considered a disaster. The adventurers knew those vampires were physically powerful. With all the servants captured, it was the perfect time to take them down. The motivation worked, and they felt strong enough to take them on and were about to attack. The vampires could not accept the humiliation of being physically weak. They all surged forward at once and caught up with the adventurers. Their movement was restricted before they could understand what was about to happen. They chose to suck their blood immediately. From the start, they planned to control those adventurers after draining their blood. Just when everyone was terrified, something unexpected happened, and the vampires could not sink their fangs into the adventurer's skin because it was too tough to pierce. Leon, a one-man army, came to the rescue again because he had already cast a magic defense on those guys. He pointed out the possibility and explained that because of it, they really couldn't suck any blood from them. It was impressive that he cast a defensive spell. The vampires took it as an insult because their fangs could pierce steel, and no spell could stop them. Then they recognized the key as the person who had noticed them. They all decided to handle him first. The moment they attacked, Leon swung his sword and cut them all down in a single strike, taking them out as if they were nothing. Henry and his group had seen such an event before, but were still stunned to their core when they realized how strong the boy really was. Now the adventurers standing there were talking about him. Leon knew vampires couldn't die, so he told them to stop playing dead. When they regained their senses, they found their wounds were not healing at all. They were suffering, and when they asked, they learned Leon had applied an anti-buff to his sword. He had done it to get better at killing undead. Leon could easily get rid of them at that moment, but he was thinking of keeping them alive to learn about the other missing people. Everyone agreed with the statement. Suddenly, the vampires began emitting a powerful black aura, warning everyone not to underestimate them. Choosing death over capture by humans, they killed themselves instantly. Returning to the guild office, they reported the incident details to the guild master. Visibly shocked, he sought reassurance, but could not accept that they had seen vampires, and suggested they had mistaken a monster for one. Skeptical, he thought they might have mistaken a succubus for one of their own. Still, his instinct shut down immediately, because those monsters weren't very strong, and on top of it, they were all female, although males were present then. The guild master gently apologized for not knowing enough. He then suggested the men pretending to be vampires might not actually be vampires. The discussion went on until staff interrupted and told him to just agree because it was a waste of time to keep arguing. The guild master accepted it, but said the guys had already taken care of it. No more key tapping, and everything resolved itself. Fed up, the guild receptionist turned his chair around and gave him a stern look to make him take the discussion seriously. She warned there might be more vampires nearby because they'd just found a few. They were sure there was another stronghold of such monsters. After that, they had to be careful to help and rescue the people who had been snapped as reported. Fortunately, human blood was their favorite food, so they would not kill the captives right away. The biggest problem was how they would respond if the vampires had evolved. All the adventurers were worried, and Leon could not understand what it meant. However, the guild master was, and he decided to report the same to the lore immediately. Henriette took on the responsibility, believing it would be the quickest way. All responsibilities now fell to Henriette. From then on, things would get much scarier. After reporting to the guild, the senior adventurers were dismissed and put on standby until the next move was decided. Leon was on his way, thinking the vampire stronghold might already have been demolished, and planning his next move. The caretaker called him a rookie as he walked in. He wondered what kind of quest he had completed that day. Thinking he was innocent, Leon said he had solved a kidnapping case and identified the culprits to take down. The caretaker laughed and called it commendable, and praising him for his skill as an adventurer. She found it cute when the boy lied about that statement. People saw him as an adventurer, but expected he'd do work like gathering herbs or searching for people. Given his age, she kindly praised him for being a hero later in life, and while they talked, the cat siblings pulled her from behind. Their eyes pleaded for something. The caretaker knew what to do, and immediately went to the bookshelf to take a regular one and give it to them. I instructed them to put it back on the counter when they were done, then took the book. They all went into the room, and Leon was glad the others were enjoying a book where even the slime was interesting. All four sat in the living room, and they recognized the book as The Adventures of Leon the Great. Those guys liked it because the name matched their masters, and the siblings recognized him as the one from the book. Leon denied it, then began reading them the stories written in the book. Many of the details in it were completely false. As they read, the story reached its climax when the great Leon arrived at the Demon King's castle. A terrifying figure with a long lion's head, a bare body, and a serpent's tail. The children were terrified by its appearance, but Leon knew it didn't really look like that and was human in appearance, though huge. He went on to say that after a fierce battle, the great hero finally defeated the Demon King. Peace returned to the world, and everyone lived happily ever after. Those guys liked the ending that made the book's hero resemble their master. Later that night, they went back to rest. They were lying on the bed in the middle of the night when someone knocked on the door. Leon woke up. Arriving, he found the caretaker terrified and holding a lantern to see what had caused the noise. Leon asked her to stay behind because he thought it might be dangerous. When the noise came from one room, he forced the door open with his hands and discovered something he definitely had not expected. Someone had been killed, and he was calling for Leon Prey, the man he'd been waiting for since the beginning. People realized the man was a vampire who had drained all the blood from the nearest person. The caretaker disliked the mess and scolded him for causing it. Advancing to teach him a lesson, she took him down the moment she learned it was a vampire. The man on the floor was trying to urge them to run away, because the vampire could also suck their blood. Terrified of her toes, the caretaker ran and fell on her face. The vampire showed no interest in stopping her, since he wanted the blood of the child who caused all the trouble. The The vampire giggled and laughed at the scent of the boy's blood, aware that the Keed standing in front was not merely a Keed. He knew that if he drank the boy's blood, he would be closer to the Lord. Lord meant the Vampire King, and he told him that after their long period of obscurity, they were only one step away, and that the same night one of the 6 vampires, himself included, would become the Lord. Leon realized the vampire came from a high-ranking species whose chief aim was to evolve into the Lord. Unfazed, he casually drew the sword from his magic pocket before the vampire could even blink. Rushing forward to kill, he stopped him from sucking any blood. The slash was nearly perfect. The vampire's body was sliced in two, and he fell to his knees on the floor, trying to heal the wound. But it was not healing at all, and seemed completely furious. He struck one of the Keeds, assuming Leon would waste his time handling it. Trained well, the cat siblings took down the monsters with a few more kicks, leaving the man even more stunned. Determined not to leave any opening, Leon rushed in and struck the vampire's heart with a single blow, aiming straight down the barrel of his weapon. With that, she called him an average vampire, and he fell back onto the floor. Amazed at his defeat, the vampire remained certain as he took his last breath. He knew he could not defeat the Lord, because one of the other vampires would soon become one and kill him. Looking out, Leon saw other vampires draining civilians' blood, while the terrified caretaker sat outside. She asked whether he had really dealt with the man inside. Leon casually admitted he had killed the man with his own hands. He then left the location to hunt down the others, telling her to wake everyone and hide in the basement room. Seen in one of the taverns, Kane enjoyed the night while drenched in drink. Even the receptionist knew she always went overboard because she loved it. As an adventurer, she was told not to drink so much because it gave her a poor aura. However, Keen found a way to get away from the filthy men who joined the team as adventurers and showed no respect. When the receptionist asked about her type, her eyes sparkled, and she said she liked boys because adults and children disappointed her, but watching a boy grow from a child into an adult felt pure and beautiful to her. The lady thought she was beautiful only when she stayed quiet. While they were deep in discussion, from the back, someone screamed as if they were in pain. Turning around, they saw a vampire sitting on one member's blood at the bar. Kanai instantly recognized the monster and told everyone to run because it was a vamp. When everyone recognized it, they thought it was absurd that it had happened instantly. Later, they accepted what she said after realizing she was one of the senior adventurers. While the man drained all the blood from the person, he let him collapse unconscious onto the floor, focused on the adventurer's blood. Kane trembled from the vampire's aura, which showed it was of a senior rank. On the other hand, a liking for Kana's blood had begun to grow. Realizing she couldn't fight him, she ran immediately, but the vampire wouldn't let her go that easily. She blamed herself for being drunk when she was needed most. The moment she left the tavern, she saw that the man had already run out of the building at high speed. Now he stood in front of her, knowing she had no options left. Kan decided to give it a chance to win the battle, since a shot wouldn't kill her. When the scene shifted, Henriette was not dressed like a castle princess and felt uneasy in her dress because she had come as an adventurer. The head maid wouldn't let her stay in her old clothes because she was from the local aristocratic family, the Alberts. Whenever she met her feather, they always talked about her marriage. Things changed when she met him after the vampire incident. She immediately grasped the situation and was ordered that night to stay on high alert and defend the city. Quickly, she changed back into her old adventure clothes. Then they went to the bookshelf to study something. She took out another one about Leon's past life, which said the city had once been saved from destruction by that well-known hero. The people's gratitude was obvious. They had even renamed the city Liberto. Henriette was unsure what would happen if the incident happened again. About 100 years ago, a group attacked the people of this land, claiming to be the Demon King's army, but they were actually a horde of vampires. The Vampire King, who held the title of Lord. They evolved as they rose in rank, and when one evolved, it became the Vampire Lord. Only one Vampire Lord could exist at a time, and they were far stronger than any other vampire. She feared that after kidnapping so many and draining so much blood, one of the monsters had already become a Vampire Lord. It would be a serious concern if they attacked the city while the great hero was away. As she read, she heard steady stomping outside the door, and when she ran out, she saw the maids already rushing her. She learned vampires had appeared across the city. The exact number was unknown, but there were probably many. When fear became real, the most experienced adventurer drew her sword and charged into battle, slicing vampires with each strike. While they lay on the floor, she sprinkled holy water on them, turning them into ash. That was Leon's advice on Whip. He said that if they couldn't kill an undead by force, they could use holy water instead to weaken its power, which is why she brought some. Even though Rant had already killed 5 of them, they had infiltrated every corner of the city. The most disturbing thing was the people who were controlled after their blood was drained. Unable to recognize them, she found it harder to fight once she realized they were being controlled. It was clear that at this rate things would get much scarier, and the whole city would be overrun by vampires. Taking out a magic item that let her locate other places, she needed to regroup with the others and felt relieved when a companion appeared nearby. Her happiness lasted only a moment when she looked up. She saw a vampire holding a corpse in her hand. It looked terrifying and wore a star-shaped crown on its head. Its aura was clearly far greater than any others. Nothing Henriette had faced before, not even the vampire she had just fought, matched his intimidating aura, and it was clear he belonged to a far higher-ranking species than any shown in the books. It was clear that it was the Vampire Lord. Suddenly the vampire spoke, remembering that the hero had killed the Vampire Lord and that their clan lost more than half its power that night. After being reduced to lesser vampires, they were seen as even inferior to humans. Still, they barely survived by feeding on animals and spent long years in obscurity. Over time, their small numbers recovered as they began feeding on humans and slowly rose into high-ranking vampires. Delighted, the man rose into the sky and announced that the moment had come for a new lord to be born, introducing himself as the Vampire Lord who would rule the Night Clan. A moment later, Henriette began to shiver with fear. He ran to the body on the floor and realized it was Canna. Frozen and not responding, she realized she was already dead. The Lord remembered he had already drunk much of her blood, but asked her to regard her death as an honor because she had been nourished by the Lord's birth. Those words were far more cunning than his actions, and in pure rage, Henriette drew her sword. She rushed forward to strike, vowing to take his life. Now the vampire fixed his gaze on the lady's blood, finding it delicious, and was willing to do whatever she wanted before her last wish, even letting her strike him as much as she wanted. He kept dodging it with swift, continuous movement. Henriette tried her best, but she couldn't even touch it. The vampire seemed to be savoring her misery. Henriette had other plans. Aware that his strength far exceeded hers, she opened a vial of holy water and splashed it over the vampire's body. They assumed it might be fecal, even though it barely affected the monster's body. She created an opportunity to slice off its head. She called it a holy water attack, but just as she reached for its neck, the vampire lord grabbed it with his bare hands as if it were nothing. He made it clear the lashes would never slay him, and he was doing it only for his own amusement. In a sly voice, he told her the water would not affect him because he was a vampire lord. Furious and terrified, Henriette stepped back at once. She planned to stay at a distance, so the Lord could not suck her blood and make her undead. That would give her some time to assess the strategy. The Lord saw she intended to turn back and gave her bad news. A lord like him did not need to drink human blood to control people. He immediately ordered her to bow, and she complied. It was absurd that the city's strongest adventurer was now obeying the person she should be fighting, and in vampire terms, resistance was pointless since control had already been taken. Other civilians were glad Lady Henriette was there to save them, but they did not know what awaited them.
Oh no.
Controlled, she tried to warn them to stay back and run. The vampire lord commanded her to catch them, saying they were the lord's prey. She rushed forward before the civilians could react, knocked one to the floor, and looked up. Still, she kept begging them all to run away while she was being controlled. Seeing the danger, they tried to flee, but the vampire lord showed them no mercy. He controlled her more now, her body moving on command as her soul kept reminding her that she could not avenge her friend's death and had become a pawn of the enemy. The monster stopped killing humans, saying he had no intention of doing so and that the opposite was true. They encouraged them to breed and kept them alive for a long time because they were the source of their blood. Surrounded by vampires from across the city, the Lord declared the humans were nothing but cattle, while the vampire lord proclaimed himself king, and the others at the back supported him. They believed the city was already falling into their hands and that they had done all they could. The monster still held a grudge against the infuriating great hero, and with the demon king gone, they believed their clan would rule the world. At that moment, their place was surrounded by vampires circling in the dark sky. They did not know what awaited them at a corner, where 3 companions stood with a small keyed item, and Leon realized there were really a lot of vampires present. At At last, the main hero entered the battlefield. He began slashing at the monsters. He noticed his companions could not keep their eyes open. They had not rested well and were clearly struggling to stay awake, and Leon noticed the monsters gathering in one spot. He found the exact spot where they were all gathered. It was convenient that they were all in one place at that moment. They immediately summoned rain with a magic circle above their heads. The pouring rain killed the vampires and left them unable to move, and he drove ice spikes through their bodies to pin them in place. In just a few seconds, the holy bait ended their lives. Those present did not like it and decided to take the life of the one who had done this. When they entered the Ark of Leon, he perfectly sliced off their heads, leaving them unable to move, and they were fooled by his magic because they had no idea he could use a sword. Facing the vampire lord, he saw the surprise on the lord's face at how easily his subordinates had been taken down. Feeling the strong aura, he immediately introduced himself using the hero's name, which triggered painful memories, tried to deny it but steadied himself, reminding himself that many people share similar names. The vampire lord thought the boy was still a child because humans do not live for 100 years. To be clear, he could not have survived that, so he attacked alone to erase his presence, believing he was avenging what he had done to his subordinates. Before he could even touch Leon split the monster's body in two with his sword. Things had been fairly prosperous, but this time the Lord could regrow his body and reattach both halves while blood dripped from his mouth. He wondered how it was possible. Leon, on the other hand, it became clear the killing buff was practically ineffective on him. A flashback showed him how it was in his previous life, when his regenerative powers were much stronger. Leon wouldn't prolong it and began slicing off its limbs and body as if it were nothing. Each time his magic regenerated the body, the Lord declared himself immortal and said he would keep coming back after every attack. Leon knew immortality wasn't real, and the buffs no longer affected him as much as they used to. By landing blow after blow, he could drain his immortality energy. Knowing he would eventually wear out, he tried to figure out how long the task would take. Not wanting to drag it out that long, he chose something else. At that moment, he realized he could not move on his own. Chains now lay across his body, a mind-controlling spell. The Lord was pleased he had finally found a way to take care of the Kid. Closing the distance, he repeated that he did not need to drink a human's blood to control anyone, but he was interested in drinking Leon's blood. Leon saw an opening and seized it, slicing off that Lord's head. He knocked it to the floor like a football, and he could not regenerate. It still puzzled him how the boy cracked the mind control code. He realized Leon had a strong resistance to magic. It made him look like a true monster, since Leon intended only to end it. Casting a magic circle beneath the monster, he began to suffer as the magic sliced his body again and again. It felt like continuous striking, and the monster's suffering grew when Leon used hell of flames to burn its body, and its attempts to regenerate were useless because the demon lord's flames could not be put out until they fully consumed the target. That realization terrified Henriette, who knew the boy was strong, but this was far beyond mere strength. He always believed his strength exceeded that of an A-rank adventurer and matched an S-rank. It never seemed likely that he could stand up to the vampire lord. His identity didn't match any adventurer rank, so he was on a completely different level. The vampire lord was begging for mercy, ready to give up his life, but Leon mocked him, saying the vampire lord himself was preventing his own death. That made him easier to bear. He desperately wanted answers about the flames that were even tormenting the demons. At last, the misery was over, and Leon was glad he had defeated the target sooner than he expected. At that moment, Henriette could not believe she was holding her friend in her arms. She lost Canny in the battle, a friend who had always stood by her, and could not stop the tears from falling. Leon noticed this, stepped forward to touch her, and she tried to pull away, but right then. Again, he used his revive magic, the same spell he had used on Iris, and the light was blinding. That made Henriette close her eyes. A moment later, when she opened them, she effed. They discovered Keen was alive again and asked about the matter. The whole scene felt strange. Henriette was speechless, and Kanae was trying to figure out where she was. Others assumed she was drunk and had fallen on the road because of her habits, and Henriette was equally scared and shocked. They thought someone could use a revival spell. Looking at Leon, she thought he resembled the man who single-handedly defeated the Demon King after mastering the highest class in 4 different jobs. It included swordsmen, a swordmaster, a mage, and a wizard. Right now, Leon had sword skills better than hers, magic stronger than Kane's, scouting skills that outmatched Tina's, and on top of that, Being able to cast the ultimate revive spell suggested he might be a reincarnation of the great hero. Moments later, Henriette dismissed the idea. Kin was acting goofy, as if nothing had happened, and she did not like it. With tears in her eyes, she screamed at her, scolding her and blaming her for it. She had to be aware of what she had just done, or it would cause a complete loss of senses. Canny did not know what the girl was talking about. Later, Canny learned she had died, and had been revived just seconds before, leaving her shaken to her core. Before she could say another word, Henriette hugged her tightly, and through tears, called her an idiot. Tina saw they were enjoying the moment but had been left behind, so she ran over, and the three of them hugged like the best adventuring group. Moving through the city, Leon saw few injuries, but just then he spotted a bat running away from the area. When the bat reached one of the caves, it changed back into a vampire and delivered bad news to everyone present who knew it. They were not ready to hear it, because one of the vampires had just become a lord. The man delivered the bad news that the lord had been defeated by a human. They refused to believe that even the Lord would not survive, so they felt their own survival was justified, and they did not know someone had followed the bat that tried to run away. It turned out Leon had reached their cave and remembered how 100 years earlier they had parked their forces behind it like that and kept on surviving. At first the vampires were terrified, but then they realized he was just a Keed and thought they could handle him without trouble, so one tried to suck his blood for revenge, but as he approached, Leon used his holy water and turned him to dust. With the others terrified, Leon mocked their strength, saying holy water could kill one of them, so they must be weak. But he planned to use his cleansing magic to wipe out all the vampires at once. It happened again, and the cave filled with bright light. The next morning, Leon returned to the inn, and both of his beasts woke up feeling rested. They told him they would leave when they were ready, because it was time to say goodbye to the city. The vampire attack dominated conversation throughout the city. People were trying to figure out what had happened the previous night, calling it a tragedy like the one from 100 years ago, but no one knew who the one man was who had defeated such a disaster-level monster. The whole crowd was praying to the hero. Others found the idea ridiculous, since they believed a statue could not come back to life to save them. They concluded Lady Henriette must have saved their lives, since she was the only high-ranking adventurer there. As Henriette walked by, they called out and asked if she was the one who had saved their lives. Turning to face them while everyone waited for an answer, she said she had not killed the vampires, but Leon Hood had. She explained that although she tried to fight, she couldn't even...
Koeffizient, jetzt kommt die Rechnung und die Gleichung. Das geht nur, wenn der Opportunismusfaktor höher ist als die eigene Ehre.
Leitet sich von Pick Me Girl ab. Geprägt wurde der in den 2010er Jahren und beschreibt ein Mädchen oder eine Frau, die nicht ist wie die anderen.
Mann, Justin, ich komm da nicht ran. Ich bin zu klein und zierlich und süß.
Pick Me heißt nimm mich und zeigt, dass sie sich so für einen Mann gibt. Daher ist auch logisch, dass sich das Pick Me Girl über die Jahre daran angepasst hat, was Männer wollen. Ja, und zwischen mir und dir, du kriegst dein Basecap zurück, wenn du mich in Final Fantasy schlägst. Da gibt's gar kein PvP. Die Nullerjahre haben den Ton gesetzt. Frauen sind alle gleich. Gleich nervig, dämlich und nur für eines gut.
Beim Pimpern machen die sich Gedanken, weil jetzt morgens wieder das mit drin. So, warte mal.
Um mehr zu sein, musst du als Pick-Me-Girl andere Frauen abwerten. Die dumme Blondine, die mit zu viel Make-up, die mit den Schönheits-OPs. Denn du bist ja anders. Das funktioniert so gut, weil wir in einer Welt leben, die so designt wurde, dass sie Frauen konstant verunsichert hält. Und zwar ganz mit Absicht. So lehnen sie sich gegeneinander auf und nicht gegen das System. Die Gewinner sind die, die dieses System aufgebaut haben.
Also ich weiß nicht, ob ich schon mal ein Dark Victory Video gesehen habe, bei dem ich nicht eine Erkenntnis hatte, beziehungsweise die mir nicht was mitgegeben haben. Einfach so. Das sind so wundervolle Videos. Meine Güte.
Männer. Denn die sitzen in den Chefetagen von Zeitungen, TV-Sendern und Hollywood-Produktionsfirmen. Sie kreieren das Schönheitsideal.
Mir war nicht klar, aber es leuchtet mir natürlich ein, und das liegt auch wieder an einer Romantisierung der Wahrnehmung der Vergangenheit. Mir war nicht klar, dass dieses dummen Blondinen-Ding natürlich einfach nur eine Pick-Me-Scheiße ist. Oh mein Gott, mir ist es gerade wie Schuppen von den Augen gefallen. Ich dachte, ach du Scheiße, ja. Das ist, glaube ich, der erste kollektive Pick-Me-Scheiß, mit dem man so zu tun hatte, nämlich die dumme Blondine, so. Oh Mann.
Und parallel dazu das Hassbild und kontrollieren so die Narrative.
Jo, aber es gibt auch Frauen in Chefetagen.
Damals kaum. Heute mehr, aber nicht dank Männern, sondern Aktivistinnen, die tatsächlich am System gerüttelt haben. Aber selbst unter diesen Frauen gibt es viele, die Opfer dieses Systems sind. Sie schauen wie Männer auf andere Frauen hinab, weil sie zu schwach und einfühlsam und damit zu weiblich sind. Denn Führungsqualität und Rücksichtslosigkeit sind Eigenschaften, die...
Verona Feldbusch küsst deine Augen. Verona Feldbusch ist, glaube ich, eine Frau, die sich diesem Pick-Me-System untergeordnet hat und es zu ihrem eigenen Vorteil genutzt. Zumindest nehme ich Verona Feldbusch immer so wahr. In allen Berichten, die so Revue passieren, also die so ein bisschen sagen, wie smart Verona Feldbusch eigentlich ist, die sind sich in dem Punkt einig, die hat sich halt dumm gegeben, sich deswegen verkauft, weil dieses Pick-Me-Ding halt, guck mal, wie dumm Verona Feldbusch ist, die kann nicht mal eine Spinatwerbung richtig einsprechen. Und da war da auch so ein Rage-Bait-Faktor. Und jetzt ist die Frage, wie geil ist das, sowas zu machen, weil man damit ja diese Stereotype fördert, ne? Jetzt, das ist vielleicht der einzige Take, den man dazu noch machen könnte. Das hat vielleicht auch noch so ein paar Stereotype verhärtet, auch wenn sie sich unheimlich davon, also wenn sie das System einfach nur gedribbelt hat.
in unserer Gesellschaft mit maskuliner Energie verbunden werden.
Die war etwas theatralisch.
Natürlich, sie ist ja auch eine Frau.
Und was hat das alles mit Gays zu tun?
Pick-Me-Girls sind das Ergebnis von Frauenhass. Ganz genau wie Pick-Me-Gays.
Was?
Entweder bist du zu feminin oder zu unkonform. Kommt dir das nicht irgendwie bekannt vor? Ich bin schwul, weil ich auf Männer stehe, nicht auf Frauen oder Freaks. Hinter all dem steckt dasselbe System.
Welches?
Wer in einer Gesellschaft groß wird,
Genauso ist Heidi Klum groß geworden. Boah, ich weiß nicht, ob Heidi Klum so groß geworden ist. Heidi Klum hat, also das Problem, ich würde das auf Heidi Klum gar nicht beziehen. Heidi Klum hat mit Germany's Next Topmodel einfach eine nee. Heidi Klum ist nicht eine von den Guten, Alter. Nee, ich würde nicht sagen, dass Heidi Klum eine von den Guten ist. Und ich glaube auch nicht, dass die per se damit groß geworden ist. Heidi Klum ist ein Pick-Me-Girl auf Steroiden. Also so auf absoluten Steroiden. Die profitiert so crazy davon, aufgrund der Tatsache, dass die alles um sich herum abwertet. Und sie hat daraus eine Show gemacht. Sie hat daraus eine Sendung gemacht. So, ich würde sogar sagen, sie ist nicht jemand, der das System spielt. Sie hat das System mitgebaut.
die Femininität mit Blödheit und Schwäche gleichsetzt, in der man nur überlebt, wenn man sich anpasst, aber merkt, da ist etwas in einem, das man nicht anpassen kann. Etwas, das sonst nur Frauen haben. Nämlich sexuelle Anziehung zu Männern. Der denkt erstmal,
Also hassen Gays die Angst, zu viel Frau in sich zu haben?
wie immer nicht alle, aber klar färbt die Gesellschaft auf Gays ab. Like, Frauen sind toll, als Company, zur Belustigung und Unterhaltung. Aber am Ende des Tages bin ich ein Mann und damit höhergestellt.
Wer bitte ist so?
Ich übertreibe hier bewusst, denn kaum wer denkt das so konkret. Es sind eher unterbewusste Einstellungen und Tendenzen. In der Realität sieht das dann viel eher so aus.
I'm not gay, but I like boys. I personally don't like to label myself as gay because for me, that word comes with things like glitter, rainbow powers.
Man versucht zu
Krass, dass wir es sogar geschafft haben, krass, dass es diese Gesellschaft oder dass es dieses System, von dem wir hier gerade sprechen, sogar geschafft hat, in einer so diskriminierten Untergruppe davon, also der Gesellschaft, es sogar da geschafft hat, die Leute zu spalten. Ne? Homosexuelle Männer sind so gebeutelt, dass sie sich von anderen homosexuellen oder andersartigen oder andersförmigen oder nicht normalen oder was auch immer, wie die das beschreiben, ist ja auch egal, dass sie sich da sogar so sehr auseinandertreiben lassen. Das ist schon ziemlich crazy. In diese Kategorie fallen dann wahrscheinlich auch diese TERFs, ne? Also die transfeindlichen Feministinnen, die es geschafft haben, sich trotz der Tatsache, dass sie für Menschenrechte kämpfen, andere Leute zu finden, die sie dann doch nochmal diskriminieren können. Also es ist insane, ja. Und das ist ein Problem, solange runtertreten gepreacht wird, also solange wir immer wieder jemanden finden, auf den wir hinabblicken können, der schlechter gestellt ist, auf den man gucken kann, weil man sich besser und wo man sich dann besser fühlt, obwohl man schlechter gestellt ist, das ist echt bitter, Alter.
Setzt auf überzogene Männlichkeit, die Ablehnung aller anderen weiblichen Merkmale, die als negativ gesehen werden und ein herausstechen lassen, sodass man den Bro-Dudes wieder gefällt. Ich bin viel heavy hier, oder? Sag schon! Hysterisch wie ein Weib!
Gott, wie kann man sich nur so anbiedern?
Naja, der Mensch ist ein soziales Wesen. Und die Angst vor Ausgrenzung triggert in vielen queeren Menschen Überlebensstress. Daraus erwächst bei einigen der obsessive Wunsch zu gefallen, um dazuzugehören.
Ja. Das ist das Absurde eigentlich, ne? Der obsessive Wunsch zu gefallen und dazuzugehören wäre nicht so obsessiv, wenn man sich nicht in einer Gesellschaft oder in einer Gemeinschaft bewegen würde, die den obsessiven Druck so hat. So, es gibt, wenn du mit Leuten rumhängst, denen das eigentlich nicht nur egal ist, sondern die halt einfach akzeptieren, dann bist du ja in einer ultimativ, so, dann hält dich ja nichts mehr auf. Aber diese Leute musst du halt erstmal finden, ja.
Es entwickelt sich ein Drang nach Bestätigung und Akzeptanz und schwupps entwickelt man sich zu einem Toxic People-Pleaser. Häufig mit Tendenzen zu Konsum für Status, um es allen zu zeigen.
I am building a community of business-minded, masculine men that each other men. Comment the word masculine if you're interested.
Oh, das typisch maskuline Hustler-Mindset, das quasi schreit. Unsicheres Ego.
Aber genau so entsteht ein Pick-me-Gay. Ein Homo, der abgrenzt und herabstuft, was zu anders ist. Der diskriminiert in der eigenen Community, denn man will selbst ja kein Opfer sein.
Ja. Oh Mann, Fizz Batman, Alter. Dabei ist es viel erfüllender, sich für solche Leute einzusetzen, Alter.
Also identifiziert man sich einfach nicht mit der Rolle und kommt mit ein paar Anekdoten in Denial um die Ecke. Also ich habe diese Probleme nicht. Ich bin nicht unbequem. Und der einzige Gewinner in diesem System...
Lass mich raten. Heteromänner.
Nein, das wäre zu einfach. Immerhin sind die meisten Hustler-Boys genau das. Heteromänner und Opfer derselben Lügen. Selbsternannte Alpha-Männer, die auf andere Beta-Männer spucken. Unter denen finden sich oft Pick-me-Boys, die versuchen, das zu cosplayen, was Frauen wollen, um sie rumzukriegen. Das Problem ist das System, von dem ich die ganze Zeit spreche. Und die Frage, welche Männer ziehen die Fäden?
Ja, und? Nun sag schon.
Jede Frau, die sich gegen eine andere ausspielen lässt. Aber genauso jeder Alpha-Male und jeder Pick-me-Gay ist am Ende nur eine Marionette. Denn was keiner von ihnen durchschaut ist, dass sie gesteuert, manipuliert und benutzt werden. Wie? Divide and Conquer.
That is.
So nennt sich die Strategie, die die rechte Führungselite nutzt, um ihren geheimen Krieg voranzutreiben. Den Culture War. Oder auch Kulturkampf. Warum? Sie wissen, gegen die Massen kommen sie nicht an. Aber je gespaltener ein Land, desto bessere Chancen haben rechte Kräfte, die Macht zu ergreifen.
Ja.
Wie schon AfD-Ex-Pressesprecher Christian Lüth sagte.
Je schlechter es Deutschland geht, desto besser für die AfD.
Und wie
Korrekt, ja.
funktioniert Divide and Conquer? Man nimmt sich eine Gruppe und zerschlägt sie in Einzelteile. So kann man sich ihrer leichter entledigen. Das passiert zum Beispiel durch Social-Bot-Armeen, die dir vorgaukeln, eine gewisse Meinung sei vorherrschend.
Oh mein Gott, Alter. Das ist... Ich hatte letztens einen Kommentar gelesen. Ich glaube, es war... Ich weiß nicht, ob es in meinem Subreddit war oder ob ich das nur übers Reddit gesehen hatte. Im Forum. Wo man gefragt hat, Alter, sind diese Kommentare... Wo kommen diese Kommentare her? Ich glaube, es gibt einen Zusammenhang von öffentlich-rechtlichen Rundfunkvideos, weil es schon ziemlich dominant ist, dass in diesen Videos im öffentlich-rechtlichen Rundfunk, wenn der öffentlich-rechtliche Rundfunk über irgendwelche in sehr mäßigen Inhalte spricht, die woke, als die woke zu identifizieren sind, Bruder, dann sind da tausende Leute, die selbst bei einem Video, das nur 20.000 Aufrufe hat oder 25.000 Aufrufe hat, irgendwie Kommentare da lassen, überverhältnismäßig. Und das ist so, Alter, wenn du dich nur daran orientierst, würde man ja tatsächlich den Eindruck haben, dass das irgendwie eine Mehrheitsposition ist. Aber es sind einfach eine Mischung aus koordinierten Kommentarangriffen, die aus irgendwelchen Telegram-Gruppen oder Social-Media-Gruppen heraus organisiert werden und Bots. Tatsächlich